And join me with Pledge of Allegiance first. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Someone needs to mute. Yeah, just mute your computer. Okay.
Not me for a change.
Are we good? So if it just starts doing it again, that's the easy way. Good now? Okay. All right, for those of you who looked at the agenda, I've rearranged things a little bit today because we have some guest speakers in from both Suffolk County and then a little bit later on from ClearGov. So I wanted to have them go through their presentation so that they can make it home in time for soccer games or something?
Tennis lessons.
Tennis lessons.
My daughter's fencing.
Yes. So we're going to start off with drinking water and wastewater issues, and I'll let Joe introduce our guest speakers.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. I'm very pleased to introduce today two representatives from Suffolk County Department of Health Services. We have Jason Heim here, Principal Engineer for the Bureau of Drinking Water, and Ken Ziegel, Chief Engineer of Public Health. I'm really thankful for them to make the trip today. They regretted not bringing their fishing poles when they saw the weather that we had and the number of people that were out fishing while we were here at work. But it's been invaluable to get them on the island. We work hand in hand with them as our regulator for just about all of our water and wastewater issues here, and even non-issues for our town buildings. So I invited them here today because of the town's priority to expedite and advance upgrading of our systems here, specifically wastewater systems. The Department of Health Services is our regulating agency, so permitting, design, finagling, and ultimate system choices go through their office. And I thought it'd be really helpful for the town board to have this opportunity to engage directly with them, perhaps initially about water issues more broadly on Shelter Island and the uniqueness of our infrastructure and water systems, but also more specifically, if you choose to, about issues, advantages, disadvantages towards our infrastructure for town buildings and how we might best move forward with choices for our town buildings. So I'll be brief and be gone so I can turn over to these guys here. But I hope you'll use this opportunity to answer or to ask as directly as you may need any questions you might have, and to please use them as a resource so that we can make this project move forward.
Thank you.
I submitted a request to share my screen. Is it good? Is it up?
You have to do it on your side.
Zoom and then hit the share button in the corner. You see it down at the bottom in the toolbar.
Oh, thank you very much. Excellent, thank you. My name is Jason Heim. As Joe mentioned, I'm the Principal Public Health Engineer. I'm also the Chief of the Office of Water Resources for Suffolk County Department of Health Services. I oversee a team of about 30 staff. We regulate the public water supply in Suffolk County, including Shelter Island. We oversee the community water supply systems, including Derrick Harbor, Shelter Island Heights, Suffolk County Water Authority on the mainland and many others. Also the small non-community water supply systems, of which there are several here that I'll talk about in my presentation. Part of our drinking water component is we have a private well sampling program. So for a nominal fee, typically around $100, residents anywhere in Suffolk County can have their on-site private well sampled for generally a $100 fee. We also do private well surveys, which I'll speak about in my presentation. That's where we have suspected groundwater contamination, or we have a private well where we found contamination up over a drinking water standard. We may initiate a private well survey and sample residents in the proximity for no fee at all. Right? Another bureau that we have, the Bureau of Groundwater Investigation Management, also does groundwater investigations and sampling. We also sample fresh surface wells across the county as part of our monitoring programs. Okay, so today I'm going to focus on the drinking water side of things. This is, in a nutshell, the community water supply here on Shelter Island. We regulate 5 community water suppliers. First one I put down is King's Cottages in no particular order. This is a one public water supply well system. It serves 7 people approximately. As of March 2024, they were doing public notification for PFOS. They had exceedances of the New York State Department of Health PFOS standard. This is one of the new, what we call, emerging contaminants, even though I believe at this point they're fully emerged. We've been talking about this one now for over 10 years. This one can be attributed to a number of consumer products. It's also been associated with aqueous film-forming foam, stain repellents, dental floss, you name it. Food packaging, and so on. Also in May of 2024, they were doing public notification for nitrates. Happy Groundhog is another community water supplier. It has one well, it serves about 15 people. In August of 2024, they had a couple of exceedances of nitrates. The drinking water standard is 10 milligrams per liter there. Daring Harbor Water District, they have 3 public supply wells. They serve around 72 people on average. West Neck Water District, which is a town-run district.
So is the library closed?
There's 3 public supply wells, serves around 195 people on average.
Going back trailer?
And the Shelter Island Heights Property Owners Association also has their own public supply well system. They have 5 public supply wells, and they serve around 500 people. This is another group of regulated public water suppliers we refer to as non-communities. That's basically where people don't live. It's more of like a business or like town hall that has their own well, but they serve sufficient number of population where they're going to be regulated under the New York State and the Suffolk County sanitary codes. So across Shelter Island, specifically, there's currently 34 regulated non-community public water suppliers with 42 public supply wells serving them. Examples of relatively recent drinking water, quality issues that we've seen for the emerging contaminants PFOS and PFOA. We've had Coicles Harbor Marina exceed for PFAS compounds. Daring Harbor Inn, they did have one well that was impacted, but the blended water going out to the consumer does not exceed the drinking water standard. Gardner's Bay Country Club has installed treatment. 2 South Ferry Bed and Breakfast. They installed PFAS treatment, but actually they changed their business practices, and I believe this is now considered like a private residence, like private on-site well. Eccentric Bagel, they've also installed treatment for PFOS. We've had iron and manganese exceedances and untreated water from the Daring Harbor Inn. Again, Shelter Island Senior Center, which many of us know about. There's an iron manganese system over there, iron exchange treated system. Shelter Island Town Hall is now posted for iron. All potable taps should be posted. Shelter Island Public Library is posted for iron, but right now they're closed for renovations, obviously. And Ellie's Country Store also has had a manganese issue in the past, and that's a treatment system has been installed. There's been chloride. This happens seasonally over at Camp Quinnipiac. We've seen typically early in the season due to over pumpage. There's been exceedances of the New York State chloride standard. That was an issue in early 2023 that was lifted later in 2023. as things kind of settled out, more rainfall, different water moved in towards the and also Maria's Kitchen, right down the road here, it's had a nitrate exceedance and they're currently posted for nitrates. So it's a quick summary of the regulated water suppliers. Now this is kind of a general summary of all the data that I've had in a database from that private well sampling program that I mentioned over a 10-year period spanning from 2013 to 2023. During that time period, we collected 375 private well samples at 155 different homes in that 10-year period. This reflects a total number of samples. It could be pre-treatment and post-treatment, repeat sampling, and then a request from homeowners that have come back maybe year after year. So over that time, we had 15 nitrate exceedances at 8 different properties, up to 13.8 part per million. The drinking water standard is 10. Or MCL, which is maximum contaminant level, that's the drinking water standard, is 10. 20 iron exceedances at 14 different properties, up to 29.4. And as you can see, the maximum contaminant level or drinking water standard is much lower than that at 0.3. Similarly, 20 manganese exceedances at 20 different locations, up to 20.4 part per million, and the MCL very low, 0.3. 6 chloride exceedances at 5 locations, up to 508 part per million, and the maximum contaminant level is half of that, approximately 250 part per million. And then there's been bacteria, coliform bacteria, E. coli, and total coliform. There's been 59 positive total coliform samples at 26 different properties and 8 positive E. coli samples at 5 different properties. So it's kind of a general summary of all of the private well sampling that we've done in that 10-year period. The next few slides are going to talk more about the private well surveys that we've done. Actually, this is a general summary right now of PFAS sampling that we've done over the last several years with our staff and our county's public environmental health laboratory. So in the recent past, we've looked at this emerging contaminant group, PFAS. We're finding it, in all 10 towns in the county, at 224 locations. We found 6 PFOS detections above the maximum contaminant level, up to 48 part per trillion. If you remember from one of the other slides, the drinking water standard is 10 part per trillion. 4 of these also exceeded for PFOA, and there's been 15 detections of PFOA above or at the drinking water standard, up to 67. And similarly, the New York State standard is 10 part per trillion. The federal government is looking at regulating these 2 compounds down to 4 part per trillion. This is the summary of all the private well surveys that we've done specifically with PFAS and then a couple of other contaminants, VOC and then nitrate survey, but most are PFAS surveys. We've initiated a survey recently, I think it was last month, in the Wheeler Road vicinity on Shelter Island. At this point in time, we've sampled 14 of the 56 properties. We have 1 exceedance. That was 24 part per trillion in PFOA, 16 part per trillion, again, the drinking water standards currently in New York State are 10. There's been a survey that we initiated earlier this year in Congdon Road vicinity. We've sampled 11 out of the 35 properties in our survey area. We've seen 1 exceedance of the drinking water standards at 48 and 30 PFOS and PFOA respectively. Montclair Avenue vicinity, we did a PFAS survey down there early this year. We sampled 8 out of 15 properties. We had 3 exceedances, up to 12 parts per trillion of PFOS and 29 parts per trillion of PFOA. Conic Avenue vicinity, last year we did sample 8 of 14 properties, 1 exceedance. PFOA was 27.1, comparison to 10 right now. Bay Beach vicinity, that was initiated last year, sampled 14 of 28 properties with 1 exceedance. PFOA at 67 parts per trillion. Stearns Point Road vicinity, initiated last year. We sampled 7 of the 9 properties in that survey area with 1 exceedance. This is trichloroethylene. That's a chlorinated solvent. It's a volatile organic compound. The drinking water standard is 5. This was an exceedance at 5.7 parts per trillion. Winthrop Road vicinity PFAS survey. last year. We initiated, sampled 8 of 15, one exceedance, PFOA 34, and PFOS at the drinking water standard of 10. Sylvan Road vicinity, we did a volatile organic compound survey, that's VOC, last year. This was based on VOC exceedance of N-butane. The drinking water standard for this compound as an unspecified organic chemical is 50 parts per billion. There was a signature that our chemists in our public environmental health laboratory believe this may have been related to a propane leak. So we've sampled 9 of the 15 properties. We did find, N-butane at 78 part per billion. And we had a PFO, a PFAS exceedance also here at 15 part per trillion. Shelter Island Kennel around the corner. We did a nitrate survey in that area. We sampled 7 of 11 properties in the area. There were no exceedances in that survey. North Cartwright Road vicinity back in 2021 as well. Sampled 1 of 11 properties. Not a lot of response there. No exceedance in that one location. And that's my presentation generally on the drinking water status over the last several years, for the community water suppliers, the non-community water suppliers, and then some of the private well samples that we've had kind of across the island to give you a general idea of the water quality that we're seeing. Yes, please.
I noticed that your data for testing kind of goes up through 2023. Have you seen an uptick in the number of applications for water tests coming from Shelter Island to your department?
I don't know that offhand. I didn't get a chance to ask my staff that question. I think that since we've developed the in-house PFAS capability, we've seen an uptick in the sample requests coming in from across the county.
Okay,
Specific to Shelter Island, I'm just not sure. I'm sorry.
that's great.
This part of the presentation, is there any questions from the board or from the public?
What grade would you give the island water quality? Maybe for a layperson, A, B, C, D, E, F, off of that, could you summarize it? That was a lot of data.
It is a lot of data to process. So, the goal is always to have everything comply with the drinking water standards. So, you see that some of the larger systems that I put up there, the community water suppliers, I think they're doing a good job. Treating the water, there hasn't been the maximum contaminant level exceedances. They may have more space available to them to properly locate wells away from contamination sources. I'm not like a New York City food department. I can't give an ABC.
Okay.
But I think that the goal is always to try to get the best quality source water that you can. And then where there's an issue or a challenge, try to put the necessary treatment online.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is it okay?
Yeah,
I don't want to
everyone should come up to the podium and state their name.
Amber, could I just probe Jason with a question first before he steps away? Jason, could you speak a little bit more detail about the categories of communities, community, non-community, private well systems, how it relates from a regulatory perspective, what those obligations are, the difference that, say, a homeowner would have versus a municipal building or a private company?
Sure. So the regulated water suppliers, so the community water suppliers are going to have the most, I would say, stringent regulations. They have to sample more often for more parameters. Mostly, the bigger systems are going to have to do annual water quality reports, which is a report that they send out to all their customers, letting the customers know what the water quality is from testing that's been done in the prior year. In New York State, they're required to submit those before the end of May. So a lot of our major water suppliers just submitted those out to all their customers. That gave them time to compile all the previous year's results, pass it before the health department, before they mail it out to the consumers or post it on their websites. So that's probably the most stringent. They have to have certified operators. Many times they are required to have emergency generators. They're required to provide corrosion control treatment, which prevents the leaching of lead and copper from, issues that you saw like with Flint, Michigan. They're required to put treatment in there and maintain that so things like that don't happen. Many of us with older homes, myself included, had old copper pipes with lead solder. So some of that, if the water sits in contact with it and it's corrosive, we generally have pretty acidic water in Suffolk County. in our aquifers, that can actually corrode some of that copper and some of that lead, and then the public can be exposed to that in the home at the tap. So we always recommend only drinking cold water and then flushing your taps before you use it. So you can always fill up a pitcher, water your plants with that, what have you. To flush that water that stood motionless in your pipes over the evening or while you were at work, utilize that for, let's say, irrigating plants or something, and then take that first couple pulls of water from the tap. The other things that they do, they're required to provide disinfection under the New York State Sanitary Code. They can do that through a couple different ways. More often than not, it's going to be chlorination for a larger system. Trying to think, that's generally the community water supply. For the non-community water supply system, as I said, that's places generally where people are going to be working, or you see, let's say, a public bathroom. I remember State Health Department, when I first came into the office, the field coordinator came in and they said, we would regulate a TJ Maxx if they had their own bathroom. So if you have a public bathroom at a place like picture in your mind a TJ Maxx, we would regulate that as a public water supply because the water is available to more than 25 people each day, more than I think it's 60 days out of the year. So a place like that, Shelter Island School, Town Hall, we're regulating places like that, IGHL, and not a lot of the businesses across Shelter Island we're regulating as non-community water suppliers. Whereas and they're required to do testing and maybe less parameters and maybe less often. If they inject a chemical because of concerns about overfeeding that chemical, which we have seen, we have them typically hire a certified operator, similar to what the community water suppliers are doing if there's active treatment. The private homeowners, not regulated. In layman's terms, it's sort of a, after you get your health department approval, after you do construction, it's sort of a drink at your own risk. It's kind of a layman's way of putting it. We certainly encourage everyone to get their private well sampled regularly. We recommend at least once a year because water quality does change. Our hydrogeologists have estimated that groundwater can move, about 1 foot to maybe, 2 foot per day. So you picture what your neighbor or, something happened down the road, a contaminant can travel, up to that groundwater flow rate, 1 foot or 2 foot per day, and eventually could get into your private well. So that's why we recommend, sampling those private wells regularly, because that water quality can change. So, and even if your neighbor's well is good, it doesn't mean that your well is going to be good. We've seen issues with well heads, with private wells that are, not regulated after they get the health department approval after construction. And the well head may be down below grade. Maybe that's subject to siphon contamination up into it. Maybe there was well damage from a lawnmower.
So, for your average layman, PFAS, scary terms, not everyone understands them. If you're a homeowner not on a community water system and you find that your well is contaminated, could you just go through some of the remedial measures someone could take?
Sure.
And what's involved?
Yeah, so I always recommend, if you don't get your water tested by Suffolk County Health Department, there are several, contract laboratories that are also similarly ELAP approved out there. But even if you get your well test from one of those companies, we can certainly welcome you to reach out to us at the health department, and we can provide guidance to you about what may be an appropriate treatment system that can address the contaminants that you may see in your water. Depending on the contaminant, it's going to be a sort of a custom treatment system. The majority of the organic chemicals that we see, the majority, not all of them, can be addressed with granular activated carbon treatment systems. If it was a bacteria issue, I'm always going to recommend, having it evaluated by one of the Suffolk County certified well drillers to make sure that that well is optimally located, maintains a minimum separation distance to contamination sources in the area. Because our properly constructed and located wells in Suffolk County should not have bacteria issues. So if it was another issue like an inorganic, let's say like the iron or manganese systems, maybe a recommendation for an ion exchange treatment system. So it's really custom tailored to the specific contaminants. I've had questions come in from the public in the past. Tell me what the panacea is. What can address all of my water quality issues so I don't have to continually test it. And I don't really know of a system that can handle all the contaminants that are out there.
And the system that you just mentioned costs,
Costs vary. It all depends on water demand and then the competitive marketplace.
well, is it $1,000 or is it $100,000?
It's been a while since I've looked at these costs, and it's like pre-COVID. So we all know what happened after COVID. But I believe I recall, sometimes he's here, I'm looking for one of the operators that we work with all the time. But oftentimes like a granular activated carbon system back then was around $5,000.
Thank you.
Right.
I have an audience question, and then I have some other questions.
Need to come up?
Yes, we do. Thank you.
So basically the question for you, I mean, first of all, like you've done a number of tests in various neighborhoods. How did that come about? Did somebody call and report that they have a problem with water and then you started looking for the problem?
Yeah.
So that's first question. Second, it seems although you've done the number of tests in different neighborhoods, the quality of the water looks pretty good, right? I mean, how would you characterize, I mean, you have isolated, too high PFAS here or bacteria there, but overall, wouldn't you say that the quality of the water is pretty good?
Let's start with your
Given that we have 3,200 properties on Shelter Island.
So let's start with your first question. Can you repeat that one?
Oh, the first question was, how did it come about that you're going
Yes,
various
okay.
neighborhoods and tests and did somebody report?
That's a great question. We initiate private well surveys in Suffolk County through a number of different means. So we may get information from our private well request program. So let's say somebody reaches out to us, pays the $100 fee. We see what their water quality looks like. And if we see a maximum contaminant level exceeds it or a level of concern, we're going to discuss that with our administration, look in the vicinity, and try to identify whether there's other potential receptors, private wells or public supply wells for that matter, in the area. And then we're going to initiate a private well survey, as I said, going around, knocking on doors and mailing letters to the last homeowner of record and try to take those samples free of charge. It may be from somebody that went to a contract laboratory, contacted us, shared their analytical results with us. And then similarly, we look at that, say, okay, what's in the area?
And then go
Let's
test.
initiate that. It could also be from groundwater testing data that we have, or really any data that we have.
But it sounds like you tested an area, did like 11 samples or whatever, but it was only one that was over the norm. So that was probably the person got the test and reported to you, and then you started looking for a wider
Yeah.
problem area, but it wasn't there, it was just local.
So the private wells.
I'll just interrupt for a second.
Oh, sure.
Once you're done with your question, could you yield the podium back to Jason?
Yes.
So that way he's closer to the microphone. Thank you.
So when we, private wells, they were good questions. So private wells are not.
Jason, if you can direct.
Toward the town board, sorry. I'm so used to having conversations. So groundwater is not, private drinking water wells aren't the best way to evaluate groundwater. Okay, wells are at varying depths. Sometimes homeowners don't even know where their well is screened, where the water is actually entering the well casing. So just because you don't see it at the next door neighbor's house, one well could have been very shallow, one well could have been, even deeper than that. It's just not a good way to gauge the overall groundwater quality. The goal of the private well survey is to limit exposure to the public. We want to make sure that the public is not exposed to these contaminants, many of which can cause cancer, right? So you've also seen that there hasn't been great response rates from the public in those private well surveys. We've sampled, one here or, 3 here out of a larger survey area. That could be that these folks are going out and getting their tests done privately, which is fine, for their own protection of themselves, their families, the renters that may be taking on their homes. Or they may be transient population that just aren't around or they're not prioritizing getting their well sampled. So just because you're not seeing it in other samples as part of the private well survey doesn't mean that it's not a wider issue. It also doesn't mean that groundwater is not going to move and now the next door neighbor or 2 doors down is going to be impacted by that contamination.
I want to turn the question towards the problem that we're trying to solve is a priority right now, which is getting to putting in IA systems in municipal buildings. So I wanted to start with what are the issues that we have with our current municipal buildings drinking water, to understand how that's going to impact our ability to put in site IA systems.
So just going back to my slides, I wanted to refresh my memory. So we had a couple listed here that are town-operated buildings, where you guys are partnering with. So the Shelter Island Senior Citizen Center, the Shelter Island Town Hall is building, Shelter Island Public Library. These all had iron issues or manganese issues. I know that we also, with some of the more recently discovered non-community systems here, we know that they're going to have a challenge, like a lot of Shelter Island, with separation distances. So the New York State Sanitary Code, I want to say 15 or so years ago, they came up with minimum separation distances. So things like storm collection systems. So whether it's a catch basin on the side of the street or from a parking lot, there's a separation distance to those that's required. There's this required separation distance to the sanitary system. There's a required separation to underground fuel tanks. So I see the challenge here, like a lot of Shelter Island, with meeting those required minimum separation distances, as well as some of the water quality problems that we have already. Just walking around with the town engineer before we came here, I got an opportunity to look at some of the infrastructure. It's substandard. The wells don't meet the current requirement for height. The sanitary seals are not sanitary. It's not what we would typically require. It doesn't have the integral casing vent. The electric wires coming in through the top of the casing vent, which is an opportunity for bacteria and other contaminants to get down into the well. So these things are a concern as far as the sanitary code is. So I think separation distances, some of the iron issues, those water quality problems, and then just the infrastructure itself needs to be updated and upgraded.
How do we deal with it? Suggestions.
Suggestions. So, I can only refer back to the policy in Article 4 of our Suffolk County Sanitary Code. The policy in the sanitary code is that the policy of the County of Suffolk, in part, is to protect the groundwater, to ensure the availability of an adequate and safe source of water supply for generations to come by, enforcing the local, state, and federal laws regulating water supply, and promoting the extension of public water supply to all areas of the county. That's the policy in the Suffolk County Sanitary Code. So, that would be, I think, from my perspective, what I would recommend is, I think, a centralized, ideally, a centralized water supply system that's going to serve some of these areas that are impacted by either contamination, substandard infrastructure that don't meet minimum separation distances. That would be my recommendation, ideally.
Could we do something on like a smaller scale where we have one well that would feed these buildings here from Justice Court through the assessor's office?
So my office doesn't specifically review the IA applications. I think that was what you said, the direction the town was going to go in. I'd want to defer that to our chief engineer, Ken Siegel.
Supervisor, you mean with respect to a drinking water system?
Drinking water, yes, yes, just in order for us to try and get something in the ground IA-wise, what are the changes that we're going, what are the obstacles we're going to be facing or hurdles to try and understand how to get to where we want to be in the most efficient manner possible.
Could we conceivably consolidate many of these individual wells more centrally to serve all of the buildings?
From my perspective, I mean, I don't want to speak for Ken, but I think that would be one option. I think it's a good option because then you're, as long as they're optimally located and you can get a reasonable separation distance and provide centralized treatment, I think that's going to save the town a lot of money. Instead of trying to put treatment at all these individual locations, you could run treated water out to each of these project areas as part of that initiative. But, I don't want to speak for Ken.
No, I agree, and the same thing could be done with IA systems if folks are interested. I mean, we talked about a couple different ideas. One was individual IA systems for basically replacing individual cesspools, right? One for this building, one for that building, one for that building. Another idea would be, should all these buildings be connected to a common IA system? Maybe the police building as well. And if it's different property owners, it becomes a challenge because then there's challenges in New York State code for sewer agency agreements. But if it's all the same property owner, you can do it. There's a way to do it. Yeah.
Right now, we're just talking about the public buildings owned by the town.
Yep.
Well, maybe the fire department too, but.
Right. So if it's all the same owner, then there'd have to be some covenants saying these would be, maintained by this property owner, certain language going in with the land itself. But again, personally, I like that idea. I like the idea of the central water. Maybe if you were to do common systems, you would do common leaching in one spot, and then separate the water as far as you can, separate the supply well as far as you can from where you're putting the treated wastewater to maximize separation distances, because that's a challenge all over Shelter Island, right? With these separation distances. And, again, individual systems are an option. Some may or may not require to go to the board of review due to the separation distances. I can say that in a lot of cases, it's not in all cases, but so if the situation is being made more protective of what's there right now, meaning if you're putting a new well in, you're increasing the separation distance to the IA system or the wastewater system, usually the board for Shelter Island, it has precedence that there's no other choice. And right, Shelter Island in some cases, as long as you're improving the situation, that's always an option too.
I have a question. Because the buildings are old and they're kind of here, variances would be needed, requested from the health department. Is that something that could be accommodated under the circumstances here? That the buildings are old, they've been here, in terms of space constraints that you're speaking to?
Yeah, usually, this is just my experience, without seeing an engineered plan and where every single thing is, but my experience is chairing the board, especially for projects like this. If you're making the situation better, if you're, right now I'm just making this up, but if your cesspool is only 50 feet away from your supply well, that's one situation right now where you're not treating the wastewater and you're 50 feet away. If you were to install an IA system that you are treating water, maybe you could move the leaching from that IEA system 75 feet away or 90 feet away to maximize it. The board of review would typically, again, I can't predict the future, but historically would approve something like that. Because you're making the situation better than it was.
The one factor I just want to add to that is if it's a regulated public water supply system like Town Hall, because you're not meeting the separation distance, we would require disinfection treatment for that.
Now, we kind of looked into trying to site a well on the lots from the corner to, Justice Court. And we're not 200 feet from the cemetery. I know that's a setback. And then we do have all the drainage in the roads. So would it be our best option to try to site our water well somewhere else, like Sachem's Woods, where it's far enough away that there really is nothing to conflict with the well? And then you have more freedom in siting your septic system here because we don't have that well septic constraint anymore?
So the town engineer brought us down just to see the Sachem Woods property. We discussed that a little bit. We talked a little bit about the county's well monitoring network.
Mhm.
And I think the challenge is you don't know what the water quality is on that property.
Right.
But if it made sense for our team and our administration was in agreement, that could be something that we could explore. I know that you're talking to the USGS as well, just to evaluate what the water quality is on that property. I think that would probably be, if the water quality is good, a really good solution to meeting those separation distances.
One of the fears of the public with something like that, obviously, is that growing and expanding and turning into a public water source, which would feed density. I mean, if we would consider something like that, it would have to be locked down as a water source solely for the town buildings.
So that's completely up to the town, and it may be determined based on your capacity of that system. So if your capacity of the system was only, let's say, 1,500 gallons per day, or whatever it is that you need to serve all these buildings, that's what it is. And if the town owns that and controls that, let's say there's a new project, someone who wants to develop something, and we see a water main in the street that's along this area, they have to get a water availability letter to submit with their application. The town would issue a water availability letter that says, no, I'm sorry, public water is not available to this property. You would control the availability and the capacity of that public water supply system.
Yeah, I guess one of the fears is maybe this board would issue that letter, but what about 3 boards from now?
It would require infrastructure upgrades. If it wasn't sized properly with excess capacity, you would require some investment to expand upon that system, so.
Okay, so there's steps to take to lock it down or at least make it extremely difficult to expand it.
I'm sure, I'm not a lawyer, I'm an engineer, I'm sure there's ways.
I just want to add on top of that too. I know at least other folks around the county have brought it up to us, this fear of the new IEA systems being able to cause that also, because they're treating the nitrogen, they're treating the wastewater now. And a community IA system cannot create development, and the answer is no. The answer is the sanitary code, Article 19, that was developed, had to be approved by the Suffolk County Legislature. And when we went in front of the legislature to get it approved, they said, there's a clause in there that says IA systems cannot be used to increase density to address that fear. So.
Jason, thank you for coming, okay, first of all.
Thank you for having me.
We've been dealing with this water septic issue for many years now. This is not like something that just came up last week, okay? Have you had any proposals, or you have any draft proposals from the town at any given time that you've been able to look at in terms of what we're looking for and where we would be trying to clean up in the septics, and anything at all? Have you have anything in paper format, okay, from the town?
I'm trying to think paper format. I know that there was a proposal for, I I think it was a municipal sewage collection system.
Yeah, that goes back
broke down by the EMS building.
Right.
And then we had some concerns about nearby public supply well. And I don't know the status of that project.
That's the old, it was the old thing. I'm just curious if you had anything currently with what the town is looking to do here with its municipal buildings, okay? So it sounds like you don't have, so it would really be important for you to have something like that, and you would be welcome, you would welcome having a document like that, and like a needs assessment of what we have?
I'm not really 100% sure I know what the question is. But
Well, the question is, we have.
application, that's our job.
That's your job.
So apply, we're all for it.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, and staff are always, and engineers are always open and offering, hey, come in, like, get a starting place, and then come in, because they see, you know, they do that work every day, so.
If the town's working with a consultant or, with the town engineer, if you guys have some thoughts together and you want to have a pre-meeting with some of our offices and our administration, I think that we're open to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just to let you know, the wastewater treatment plant on Manwaring Road, that is dead.
Okay. Thank you.
John Cronin, you had a question? You
It wasn't a question, it was
want to come up?
just a comment to Gordon's inquiry. The one application that was made concerned the joining of the school with the community center, and that was in 2014. So the school wastewater effluent and the community center wastewater effluent was the subject of a grant-funded design project. The design was complete, was submitted to the county, and in the review process, the well failed at the community center. That well could not be relocated because there is no place on the community center property where another well could have been drilled without being subject to septic effluent from the surrounding properties. So at that time, the county's position was, you have two choices. We know what the contamination effect is to the existing old well which failed. So if you can get that well functional again and a new well was drilled adjoining the old well, if you can get those well locations operational, you can continue with your old septic system because we know what the risk is from that system to drinking water. But anything that involves the design of a new system, even one that's going to be low nitrates, we don't know what the impact is going to be because the leaching field for that system was designed to go into the east lawn by the Legion. So the county's position, rightfully, in my opinion, as an engineer, was we don't really know if that leaching field is not going to ultimately impact your old well location. But we know the effect of the old system. So in the end, we were not able to do that project. The school ultimately had to do their own thing. And to this day, we still have an old well and an old septic system at the Legion.
Thanks, John.
So that kind of answers, I think, what your question was. I don't know how much the fellows recall that from 11 years ago, but that.
It's been a few projects since then.
I'm well aware of that, JJ. But that is actually the situation. And, unfortunately, Gordon, we had to actually walk away from the grant money that paid for that. And in all honesty, that would have been the very first joining of a school with a new type system in Suffolk County. And the reason that we came up with that was because at the time, Al Krupski and Sarah Lansdale, Al was a county legislator, Sarah Lansdale was director of economic development. They approached me about doing something on Shelter Island that could involve a public school. So Fred Thiel was behind it, Al was behind it, Sarah was behind it. We got grant money from the county to do it. We came up with a consultant who designed the whole thing at no charge to the town. And then virtually on the verge of having the okay to do it, we had the well failure.
Thank you.
Some more questions that I have for you is, if we decide which direction we want to go, whether or not we're going to go with individual systems or try and do a joint system for multiple buildings, can you talk at all about timeline for permitting? And the likelihood, first, will we have to go for, before, for variance? And how long the whole process could take?
So how long, if it would need to go in front of a variance, that's tough to say unless I have plans in front of me. That's really tough because there's so many variables that go into it. There is some tolerance in terms of not meeting setbacks where you don't have to go in for a variance, but there are unique situations. So until there's a draft of a plan, that's the time that I'd be able to say, this needs a variance or it doesn't need a variance. In terms of timeline itself for staff's backlog for planning reviews and so forth, so wastewater management's, their goal was 2 weeks, maybe they're at 3 weeks right now. If there was something like this, folks wanted to meet in person and have a meeting, they can usually meet pretty quickly. If you folks were interested in actually sitting down with some of the engineers, within weeks usually. So,
And if there's a drinking water component to that, our goal is a 45-day turnaround on the drinking water side of things.
Yeah.
And, more often than not, you're not hitting everything all perfect in the initial submission, so there may be, a couple rounds of review and comments. That's typical.
yeah, and then I guess it depends on other factors. I looked at aerials over here, but wetlands, any other permits that have to get done. Wastewater typically won't release their permits until all the other permits are in place, which tends to slow things down a little bit. It's just part of the process, right? Water review, as soon as the plan is close enough to the point where the reviewer says, yeah, this can go in front of the board, it can happen quick. It can happen as long as the board nowadays, so long as we have like a week and a half's notice, we can usually get it on the board of review for that month. And then turnaround time from the board of review determination is almost 30 days. Sometimes it's 45 days, especially in the summer with holidays, with vacations and stuff like that, but it varies. On our end, we can move pretty quick.
See if I have any of my notes. Jan, you have questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
If you could come up, please. I just want to make sure everybody can hear on channel 22 and Zoom.
So I have a question. In terms of individual septic systems or AI systems for all the buildings, that's probably not going to happen because there's not enough room. What makes sense to centralize everything. And so if there was one AI system developed and one well to share across all those buildings here, you see this big piece of land here. You as an engineer, not a lawyer, could you think that a system, both well and the septic system for $1,000 per day, which is all those buildings combined, could that be fitted there?
From a
That space available, you can see it's really.
Cemetery next door too.
Yeah, that's the challenge. I think we looked at that earlier in like a pre-meeting walkthrough. The town engineer sort of showed us this and, it wasn't all that visible in the back, but they did point out, there's a cemetery over there. And that would be a challenge from a water supply standpoint because that's one of the potential contamination sources that we look at as part of the minimum separation distance. Sorry. So yeah, that would be a challenge, I think, from the water supply perspective, siting a well here and meeting all the required minimum separations. And we have the road drainage, the parking lot drainage. So that's still a challenge. That's why that Sachem Woods project, that would have been, maybe a better possibility, something certainly to look into to meet those minimum separation distances. It's a great piece of property. I think it has a lot of potential. I think that, the town should look at, their long-term, interests and, you mentioned something about the age of the current infrastructure, I think was brought up before. What are your future plans? What's the best use of that property, long-term? And this whole site, I mean, it's a great town center. Got to see the town supervisor's office before, and then I saw the police department, I was a little jealous, I was like. But, yeah, I would say from a water supply perspective, there's some challenges to that proposal.
But could you just follow up?
If you could come back up, I'm getting comments that it's hard to hear when people aren't speaking towards the mics.
Okay, so just assuming that it's difficult to fit on that piece of land, both the AI system for all the buildings and water well, could you then put the water well, police station? So put the water from there and septic, AI goes in here.
I think that we would need to see a plan and a proposal to confirm all the separation distances. Anything's possible. We're going to look at those various contamination sources I mentioned, road runoff, parking lot runoff. There's parking lots over, at the adjacent buildings over here. We had an opportunity to look at that building as well. I think there's a street cross street over there. So it's going to be the same thing, road drainage concerns, the cemetery, I think on that property as well. So that's going to be a challenge.
Jason, just listening to you talk here, I think you did a pre-construction, you did a walkthrough recently here?
Yeah, just this morning,
This morning, okay. Okay, and the other thing is, what seems to come down is it's hard for you to answer any of these questions really unless you have something of what the board is really looking to accomplish, okay? I mean, I think this is a great conversation, I think it's incumbent upon the board to put something together to you in some kind of a draft basis, okay? And then I think you're better able to answer the questions. It seems like we got a lot of probables here because we really don't have you don't know really what we're really trying to accomplish. I mean, yes, overall, but I think you need something in a plan format.
It would be helpful to, at the very least, have a survey of the current infrastructure.
Right.
And then maybe get together for a meeting.
Yep, great.
Yeah.
Current infrastructure, cesspool locations, swell locations, you mentioned
Right.
that.
The road drainage, cemetery, all that stuff. Yeah.
Joe, do we have that, or is that easy to put together?
Yeah, we have most of that stuff, not in a consolidated plan for our new approach, because we have a couple lanes to pick in terms of our strategy. And so I actually like to make a couple closing comments if the questions are done, whenever they're done, yeah. Or whenever the board is done, for probing questions, yeah.
Dave, come on up.
Of the various studies that,
If you could face,
of the various hotspot studies that you have, are they still active investigations, and can community organizations increase your participation rate? That's appropriate.
It's the second part of the question that I'm delaying my response on as I ponder the proper answer. We have had elected officials and community groups try to get involved with our outreach efforts in the past. The concern that we have is the data is considered confidential to those private well homeowners. So we don't share the specific addresses or names with other folks. We do share it with the New York State's Department of Health and Environmental Conservation when we have a maximum contaminant level exceedance. So then they may evaluate that, and then on a case-by-case basis, they may provide alternate water supply to homeowners that are impacted above the maximum contaminant level. All of the surveys that I put up there are still active private well surveys. And so homeowners are more than welcome to contact us Even if you've been sampled more than a year ago in some of those survey areas, you're certainly welcome to contact us again, get on our backlog for private well testing.
How long is your backlog?
It's like some of the other backlogs mentioned, it's always resource dependent. Right now it's honestly a busy time of year. We have a lot of our seasonal transient population coming back out. That's when they're thinking about the water. That's when their homes are de-winterized, they're summerized, I like to call it. And their water's then available for testing. The Public Environment Health Laboratory that analyzes our samples at the county, they turn around the analytical results around 2 to 3 months after testing. So that's the turnaround for the analytical results.
Do you have a slide with the water testing contact information or?
Yeah, I'd love to provide that verbally. I don't have my contact information on a slide. I may have one business card. I do have one business card. Our main number is 631-852-5810. Again, Suffolk County Department of Health Services, Office of Water Resources, Suffolk 631-852-5810. We recommend annual private well tests.
Thank you.
Well,
I was gonna say, Dave's coming and then.
their well test request form is now online, so you can send it online. Absolutely. For some of the more savvy, maybe folks out there, technically savvy, yeah, absolutely. It's available online. Go to our website, Suffolk County Department of Health Services, Office of Water Resources, and there's links.
Jason, this is a follow-up question to what you
David, just state your name for the record.
follow-up question to what Dave Weaver just said. Has any municipality, we're unique here on Shelter Island, just like Block Island, has the town government, you mentioned that your well testing is $100. My suggestion, and it may not be, available to do, and I understand the legal ramifications, has any municipality ever tried to, like, for example, put $100 more in your taxes and have everyone's well tested? And of course, you wouldn't get the data, but it's incumbent on Suffolk County to make sure that every private well has good water. And I'm saying that, can that even be looked at as a possibility? That's it, thank you.
Okay. Kathleen, we can look at it. My gut reaction is probably
No.
not. We need to ask the lawyers.
That's right.
And I wanted to leave that up to the town board because I think it was more directed at the town board, but there is something that I do want to add to that. The county health department used to have this private well testing program for free for everyone. There was an enormous response. This is before my time. And so it was resource dependent. They started charging, I think, a $50 fee. Now it's gone up to a $100 fee. So while we certainly encourage everyone to get tested, that certainly would drive up our backlogs and our resource needs. So the fee may change if that's the route that we want to go. We have to certainly discuss that with the executive branch and our administration.
If you come up, thank you.
I just want to say that this water testing program that you're running, it's a great value because I got my test results, pages and pages, hundreds of chemicals, all this for $100, so this might be heavily subsidized. And I would assume, if somebody did that privately, it would be many hundreds of dollars, if not thousands of dollars, and
Thousands.
Yeah. So it's a terrific value. I got my water tested, waited 3 months, but then I know what the heck.
Yeah.
So it's a good program.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments. We're very passionate about our private well testing program. I know our county executive is also very proud of our private well testing program. We test for coliform and E. coli bacteria, inorganics such as metals, volatile organic compounds, semi-volatile organic compounds, pesticides, emerging contaminants such as 1,4-dioxane and the per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, the PFAS compounds that I mentioned before. pharmaceutical, personal care products. It's just, like you said, a phenomenal deal. Contract labs, they have to charge what they charge, and
And even their best tests are not as good, not as comprehensive as yours.
I'm sure there are programs out there, but like you said, it is heavily subsidized by the county. But I appreciate those comments. Thank you.
Jason, just one last question on properties, on commercial properties that have change of use. Do you monitor that at all? If a property is a retail store that's selling widgets or whatever, and it becomes a restaurant, how do you do use change of use? Do you look into that at all?
In all honesty, I don't know that we are doing that or we've done that. It's sort of, we're out on the roads all the time as far as, looking for new non-community public water suppliers. I think that's where you were going with that.
Well, I was just thinking, when we have here, since we have mostly individual wells, okay, that are supplying things. If you have, let's say, a bank that becomes a restaurant, do you look at that differently as a change of use as far as water is concerned?
In all likelihood, because a bank, they may not have a public restroom. It may just be for the employees on site. They may not have the minimum number of employees of 25
Right.
or more. So if that all of a sudden became a restaurant, we'd certainly have to regulate that. So yeah, there would be a change.
Just wanted it for informational point.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
And a lot of times that gets triggered through another mechanism, like the health department. So for example, in your example, the bank to a restaurant, they had to upgrade their whole sanitary system, which would trigger a look at the water supply system.
Right.
So many times that's how it gets referred.
That's a great point. So we do coordinate with the other offices, our Office of Wastewater Management, as well as the Bureau of Public Health Protection that regulates the food establishments. So food discusses it with wastewater management. They require them to upgrade, put in the grease traps and all that. Sorry, I'm a clean water guy. So yeah, when they do those upgrades, they coordinate with our office. We verify whether or not it meets that definition.
Any other questions? Gary, you wanted to do a wrap up?
Yeah, I want to just express thanks to Jason and Ken for coming today. I hope everybody found this useful. I also wanted to take this opportunity to talk about critical path and where we are towards our project here for the municipal buildings. In following up on the centralized wastewater effort, it became clear that our path forward for wastewater solution would be individual IA systems on property. For the reasons of or lack of support for a centralized system down at Van Waring, the assumption from the design side was that same lack of support would likely exist if we were to choose a site that was closer to town, like the fire department, or this property next door wasn't actually available at the time. But for the sake of being able to do a piecemeal approach strategy of one building at a time, the individual system on site makes a lot of sense. That allows us the opportunity to look at the police department individually or the justice court individually and work towards getting those systems in the ground now. At the time, up until a few weeks ago, the funding channel for this project was very unclear. We didn't know if the federally earmarked money would subsidize individual systems. We didn't know if the federal earmarked money would subsidize associated drinking water system upgrades. So those questions are slowly being answered, and we now know that that is the case. Nonetheless, I still recommend that we pursue the individual system approach, parcel by parcel. But before the board, I think are a couple of key questions that still dictate how we move forward with this project. The first is the approach. Are we going to take a piecemeal approach and go parcel by parcel, or are we looking to package this whole thing up? And it's a bit circular with my next question is, what is our drinking water supply strategy? Are we entertaining a centralized system, be it at St. John's Woods, be it a closer parcel to these subject parcels here, like the lot next door, or like's been suggested tonight, the police department or town hall. If we're interested in exploring those, which I do highly recommend, that is a strategy we need to make clear so that from a design perspective, we can move forward. How we site individual systems for septic is largely dependent on how we're going to approach the drinking water side. And we can alternatively decide that you don't like any of those options and we want to stick with it exactly as it is. Every parcel is going to have its own well, every parcel is going to have its own septic system. And that approach is going to have a totally different cost and permitting profile than if we were to go the centralized route for a small or larger water system. So I'm actively working on layouts for septics on properties. I've actively engaged with the health department over the past several years for what are constraints, what are permitting challenges, what are cost challenges. But we now have a few of these items coalescing and giving us some answers, i.e. funding, i.e. a board's desire to move forward with the project altogether. And also, I think the pretty clear solution for using individual systems on individual parcels. So I think we need to continue the conversation. We have a task force that's established. It's going to be meeting more regularly to discuss updates and the position of the board. But I would leave you with that today, that's going to need to be a continued part of the conversation is how are we going to address the water delivery system? We can make a choice. Each is doable. Some have more or less cost impact, operational impacts to the town in the long term, and they're significant. So this is the opportunity, I think, to make a strategic decision, and the rest of these pieces, as circular as they are going to fall into place. So I'm hopeful that we're closer than ever. I know for a fact that we are actually much closer than we were just a month ago in making forward progress here. But that's the conversation. We don't have to have this. I don't intend to have this conversation, but that is the conversation we're going to have to continue to have.
Thank you for your work and guidance on this.
Thanks. Yeah, I hope everybody found this useful. And I'm on the agenda again for another item, but I do have to run these guys down very soon.
No, yeah,
Okay.
there's distance.
Take them off the ferry.
And then come back. Yeah.
No, we have distance.
Okay.
I'll talk to you later.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, much appreciated.
Bill, I think you left your phone.
Another invited speaker today is Rob Battaglia from ClearGov. And this is a firm that presents every year at the Association of Towns. And Gordon and I have had a couple of meetings with Rob, as well as brought Shelby in to go over it. And it concerns what kind of things we can make changes to with our budget presentation to the public. So Rob, are you, I see you've unmuted.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Perfect. I appreciate the opportunity to present today. I'm now sharing my screen. Just let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes.
Perfect. So for those who are not familiar with our company ClearGov, we are a cloud-based budgeting software company. My name is Rob Battaglia. I'm the New York solutions advisor for our company. I'm actually from Long Island and from Suffolk County, so very familiar with Shelter Island. Our company works with over 1,300 different local government entities across the United States. In the state of New York, working with over 60 different local governments. And our company only works with local governments. So all of our budget software solutions are designed for how a town, a city, a county, a village, a school district operates. We don't work with private sector organizations. We don't work with nonprofits. We don't work with state agencies. We're just focused on how communities like Shelter Island operate. You can see here on the screen some of the different local governments that we work with. In the state of New York, some communities not too far from Shelter Island that come to mind. On Long Island, we work with Bellport, we work with Garden City, we work with Long Beach, we work with Port Washington North, and a handful of communities of similar size all across New York State. And really where we're coming at this from is my understanding of the town of Shelter Island's budget process. It's essentially a process made up of Excel and PDF reports being generated out of the accounting system, and then a spreadsheet process to develop the budget. And then the final result is a budget presentation document placed on the website in a PDF format. We hear that process candidly. It's the process most towns are using. That process, candidly, we hear it's tedious, it's time consuming, and it maybe leaves much to be desired from the public and maybe even board members on how the budget is presented. So we believe there is a more modern approach to the annual budget cycle. What we have designed is a budget cycle management suite with a handful of different modules for each unique aspect of the budget process. We have tools around planning and tracking, tools around developing the numbers with your departments to create the budget, and tools around financial reporting and transparency. All of our software is designed to complement the town's existing accounting system. So we're not looking to change any of the existing systems that the town is using on the finance side for general ledger, accounts payable, utility billing. I believe the town's using Williamson Law Book, right? The town would continue to use that system. We're not looking to replace that. What we're talking about is complementing that system and really digitizing a lot of the manual spreadsheets and PDFs that exist for the budget currently. We've been looking at two main modules for the town. The first one, which I've talked with a couple of the board members, Amber included, is on the digital budget book, which is really going to be around the budget presentation. So in year one, if the town board was interested in doing this, our software would be able to take your financial data and automate a budget document that is the most professional looking budget document out in the industry with charts and graphs and narrative detail. You would still continue to get everything you're getting today, but really creating a document akin to something that Suffolk County would be putting out or New York City would be putting out. But instead of throwing, endless amounts of budget analysts at it, our system is able to automate that type of document out of the box off your raw data on day one. This document will be digital and interactive. It'll be website based, mobile friendly, tablet friendly. You'll still be able to print it into a PDF, but you'll get the best of both worlds, a digital interactive budget, something that you'd expect in 2025, as well as that professional looking PDF. Our system will also create a document for you built around the GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association's Distinguished Budget Presentation Award Best Practices. So the GFOA Budget Award is the industry recognized highest standard of what a local government budget document should look like. Our system gets you that quality of document around those best practices out of the box. We also have another module that can be implemented in the second year in FY26 when the town has more of a bandwidth to take this on. And this would really digitize more of the line item budget development process. So instead of departments using worksheets and emails and Excel spreadsheets and in-person meetings to submit their budget requests, and instead of the town board having to use manual work to review these budget requests and develop the budget, you can do so in the cloud, where our system has the ability for you to collaborate on the budget all across the town in a much more streamlined way. You'll be able to centralize communication, supplementary documentation, there's audit trails, there's forecasting, there's fund balance simulator. So our suite of solutions is designed for both presentation as well as developing the budget. To show the board the type of document you could be getting with this upcoming FY26 budget process, I have here the town's current budget document up on the website. Instead of something like this presented for FY26, using our software, you'll be able to take your raw data and automate a document that looks something like this. This here is the town of Milton. They're a town up in Saratoga County in New York State of similar size budget to the town of Shelter Island. And you can just see, compared to the current budget document for the town, this is a digital, interactive, website-based presentation of the budget. Our system essentially creates a coloring book for you around your budget data out of the box on day one through an import-export model. So the finance staff at the town will be able to just bulk upload the town's raw budget data, and the system is then going to automate a budget document for you around financial information with charts and graphs on really any aspect of your chart of accounts. But in addition to the meat and potatoes of the budget, the system will create really a much more powerful communication presentation for the town's budget. Something as simple as a budget message letter from the town, right? There's a simple template, something you'd expect in any kind of professional looking financial report, simple templates for you and your team to leverage to create this content. Again, built around all of the GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association's best practices. There'll be a bunch of templated pages in here for you and your team to maybe reimagine the way this most important financial report and story is told each year. You know, simple things like budget process timelines. There's nice graphics inside of the system that you can leverage from a narrative storytelling perspective. This demographics page that you see here for the town of Milton's budget document, and I want to reiterate, this is their actual budget document that's up on their town's website. This demographics page you see here, that's in their budget. This is automated by our software. Out of the box, we have an API with the Census Bureau to pull this data forward. So this really nice demographics information provides some really nice context behind the budget that the town is telling. If you're actually curious what this information would look like for the town of Shelter Island, I can show you real quick. So we're not just bringing your financial data to life, but we're bringing together statistical and demographic information as well, just to provide more context behind the budget that the town is working on. And again, make your budget the most important story you're going to tell all year, that important financial communications tool and policymaking tool as well. From a financial perspective, here we're looking at the town of Milton's budget. You can see here they have their budget presented on all their different funds. That navigation bar up top is a really nice modern take on the traditional table of contents. Pretty much everything you see here on Milton's general fund presentation page is automated by the raw data once it's inside the system. The charts and graphs in our software, they're digital, they're interactive. So if a viewer wants to play around with these charts and graphs on the computer, they can do that. Of course, you still get the spreadsheet level detail. If I continue to scroll down, here we can see their budget broken down. This is the revenues for the FY25 budget on the general fund broken down by the object code. So this is built around their chart of accounts, whatever Shelter Island's chart of accounts is that would be represented here. Our team would do the heavy lifting during the onboarding to build out the product around your data architecture. And again, not only are the charts and graphs automated, but we can show multiple charts and graphs on top of each other. So if half the board members like pie charts and the other board members like bar charts, right? Everyone gets to be happy with that presentation. And having more charts and graphs is just going to make the budget information hit home, right? It's going to make it easier for the average person to understand the budget as opposed to reading just accounting style spreadsheet details. But you still get that account line item level detail like you'd show in any type of budget. On the department side of things, you'll be able to set up pages, really any aspect of your chart of accounts, but on these pages, which is really where a lot of the storytelling is going to take place for the budget, you'll be able to give your departments the ability to add on top of their financial information, any kind of narrative detail, missions, descriptions, goals, accomplishments, performance measures, org charts. So we can see here for the town of Milton, they have all the different department budget pages listed out. Here we see the town clerk. We have some really nice narrative detail, like who the point of contact is, nice department description. There's the budget for that department. Listed out here, it's very clean. It's easy to understand what that department's budget is compared to last year, what that data has been historically. If I want to continue to scroll down, again, I can play around with these charts and graphs, whether I'm looking at this on a tablet, on the computer, or it's printed out. Just to show you some variety, let me show you another client example. This is Tarrytown in Westchester County. This is one of their departments. This is their engineering department. They've put it who the point of contact is, a nice narrative description of that department. They're highlighting what took place in FY25, goals for FY26, and of course the budget information brought to life as well. But really being able to centralize everything the town is trying to achieve that next fiscal year and making that inside the budget, again, not to sound like a broken record, but it's going to really enhance your budget and make it that much more of a powerful policy tool and communications tool. Finally, if you see value in what our software offers and what these communities are doing, instead of having, this PDF up on the website with its unique URL, you're able to embed this digital interactive document with its unique URL onto the town's website. So you can make it accessible to anyone via the town's website, just like you do the PDF. But you may have noticed there's a big blue print button over here on the right. At any time, anyone can print this out. You can print out the entire document. or a piece of the document, whether someone's doing this internally or a member of the public, and you will secondarily get a printed version of it that looks something like this. You get the best of both worlds, the digital interactive document as well as the professional looking PDF. It'll automate a table of contents for you, and it'll be a properly numbered and dynamic and clickable table of contents as well. So that's the ClearGov software. I think that gives a pretty good sense of what the solution is all about. I will now turn it back over the board and happy to answer any questions.
Rob, thank you for that. And two of the clients on the page you presented are towns where I grew up. So
there you go.
Yeah. The output of your product looks fabulous. But can you talk to us a little bit about the onboarding process and how engaged you are in that and the learning curve that you've experienced with some of these municipalities?
Yeah, absolutely. Our onboarding process is relatively pretty straightforward. We have onboarded successfully over 13, almost 1,400 clients across the country in 50 different states of all different shapes and sizes. Short answer, what you can expect is an onboarding process that'll take place, again, based on 1,300 client averages in 60 to 90 days. So if the town was interested in taking advantage of the software, there's definitely still some room to do so and use the software for this upcoming 26 budget process. Basically, three things will take place during that onboarding. Number one, our team is going to onboard the town's chart of accounts and historical budget information. So the town would provide us with a file from the Williamson accounting system, and our team would do the heavy lifting to build out the product. We're talking about number one, you'd be assigned an implementation manager, someone with a name and an email and a phone number you can contact, not some info account you send a message to and hope you get a message back. And that person's going to be your quarterback for the implementation. Assisting them is a whole army of data onboarding consultants here at ClearGov. Most of them are former government finance officials, so they'll be able to speak your team's language during that implementation. And it's a very consultative process. The actual building out of the product, imagine like building a car from scratch, us building out the software around your data architecture takes us about 4 to 6 weeks. Your team will hop on a review call or two during that process just to make sure everything looks the way you want it to look. But our team does that heavy lifting to build it out. In addition to us building out the product, you're also going to go through things like training and customizing the software, training not just for the individuals using the software, but maybe training for board members or departments, customizing the software. Obviously, we looked at a couple client examples there. There's some customization options in there. So all three of those things taking place, in addition to everything else going on in the town hall. Again, the short answer is that it's about a 60 to 90 day timeline. You're looking at probably from a staff commitment time, anywhere from 2 hours to 8 hours of training. And really on the higher end, that's more going to be for Shelby on the finance team who will actually be using the software, training and customizing it. So it's a pretty low time commitment. This is something that gets up and running pretty quickly. And really the thing that turns an onboarding from 45 to 60 days as opposed to 75 to 90 days is really just how responsive the client is. Obviously, we got the 4th of July holiday coming up, so in about a month. So if a client hops on, their kickoff call and gets us the data pretty quickly, we can get you onboarded even sooner than that. If the client takes weeks and weeks to get back to us, that's the thing that delays us an onboarding. But we're very involved. We do a lot of the heavy lifting. You're going to be assigned folks with names and emails you contact at any time. This isn't something where we give you keys and we say, good luck building it out. We're very hands-on and involved.
Excuse me, with respect to the onboarding, has your onboarding process changed over the past few years? Because I did speak to the comptroller for the town of Milton just to understand what their experience was. And he did say it was a very heavy lift for the staff the first year. So I'm curious, they have been with you for a few years now. I'm just curious.
Yeah. So the word onboarding is really it's all encompassing, right? The onboarding includes data onboarding, training, and customizing the software. The data onboarding has always, we've done 1,300 clients, right? The more clients you do, the more efficient you get at it, the more staff you have. So onboarding number 1,400 is going to be more efficient than onboarding 1,000, just like it was more efficient than onboarding 500. So yeah, absolutely. Clients who got onboarded 2 years ago, it's a much more efficient process today than it was 2 years ago. For a town like Milton, the town of Milton became a GFOA Distinguished Budget Presentation Award winner. They achieved the highest level of notoriety in their budget book. And to get to that standard, right, that's like winning a gold medal at the Olympics, obviously requires a heavy amount of work to get to that point, especially if you're starting from scratch. So for them, the lift was a little bit more. They had to create some things in the software in year one that they didn't have before. But to just go from a simple PDF presentation to an online presentation, I mean, we're talking 90% of clients doing that in year one. And the clients that don't do that are the clients that had staff turnover or just never used the software. So it's really all about goal setting. If you're a town that's looking to go from, something simple that's PDF to something much more dynamic interactively in a short amount of time, that's very achievable and that's a low lift. And that's kind of what the average onboarding is. If you're trying to become that national standard, have one of the best budgets in all of the entire country, then it is going to be a little bit more of a heavy lift in year one, to create, performance measures, to create, financial policies, to create an in-depth multi-year capital improvement plan. Those sorts of things might be a heavy lift, but again, even Milton, I think if they say they were a heavy lift, they became a GFOA Budget Award winner in their second year using the software. So that's still a pretty good proof point of how quickly, you can go from the bottom of the heap to the top of the heap, nationally speaking, with our software as well.
Another question that I don't know if you had a chance to look into was measuring the number of hits. So that, how much, these budget books are actually getting looked at.
Oh, by the public.
Mm-hmm.
So we do track that data and we can make that available to clients. We have that through Google Analytics. So that is a data set that we track and we can make that available to a client upon request. Super easy to do that. I mean, just to be candid, when I started at this company 6 years ago, we had 300 clients. We now have almost 1,400 clients 6 years later. So I think if the public wasn't using the software and finding value in it, I don't think we'd still be in business or see the growth we've seen over the last 6 years. And just kind of some simple proof points. I mean, something as simple as FOIA requests, which can be very time consuming for staff to respond to. We look at that kind of data. We survey our clients. Overwhelmingly, the amount of FOIA requests among our clients has drastically decreased because of the software. A reason for that is the data is just more readily available, right? If someone has a question, they don't need to go through the painful process of filling out FOIA requests and the town having the painful process of responding to that. The answers are already there, and it closes that communications gap. That's just one small example of how our software engages with residents. But I think too, it's all based on the community, right? I'm not surprised that most of our clients, they share certain things in common with each other. I noticed that, higher end communities with more engaged residents tend to buy our software. Communities with higher tax dollars tend to buy our software. Communities with active downtowns tend to buy our software. Communities with seasonal communities and vacation communities tend to buy our software. Communities with growing populations tend to buy our software. So there are definitely communities. Not every community is the same, right? A rural town in upstate New York with 7,000 residents, that's mostly farmland. Those aren't really our bread and butter, or rural communities in Iowa, but communities that care about what's going on, communities that are engaged, communities with residential demographics of successful or engaged residents. Those tend to be the communities that buy our software. So I think the communities that it makes sense to buy the software tend to do it, and the residents are appreciative of it. And they're the ones who typically stay with the software. The communities that, probably don't have those demographics, they're the ones that maybe don't see the value so much.
Rob, I have two questions for you. One, where do you pull your demographic data for the presentations?
We pull it from the Census Bureau. So if actually, if you look here, there's actually the data sources cited. So for example, this median home value data set is from the Census Bureau from their 2022 data set from the American Community Survey. So we update that every year. For what it's worth, if you track any of this data um, more accurately than the Census Bureau, or maybe you have a different data set you'd prefer to reference, you can always swap out the data and still leverage the infographics. But short answer, it's coming from the American Community Survey via the U.S. Census Bureau.
Okay, yeah, we just find that the ACS isn't always accurate for Shelter Island.
Sure.
And then my other question for you was, like 3 years ago, Amber and I looked into this program, but at the time it was rather expensive. Has that changed recently?
I can't recall, what quote you looked at 3 years ago. I know Amber has the pricing in hand.
It has come down.
Okay, that's because, yeah, it was definitely a hard no 3 years ago. But if it's come down, then it's definitely worth looking at again.
Yeah, just to go over the cost, the digital budget book is $6,500 annually. This year it would cost us about that, including the setup. We did the discount to sign up before June 30th. The operational budget, which is actually the piece that actually excites me more because I think it would make things easier for us in pulling the budget together because of the way we can input some of the information and instead of going line by line, being able to put in cost of living increases for different lines and salaries and things like that. That's $13,320 a year. Just correct me if I'm wrong on that, Rob.
Digital budget book, $6,500 a year. We would prorate that for this year, so you can cut that annual subscription number in half. And then the setup cost would be $1,800 if you sign up before the end of the month. Digital budget book and operational budgeting combined would be at $13,320.
Okay.
Any other questions, thoughts? Anyone from the public?
I'm Mike Gainer. Rob, one thing I didn't hear you mention, which kind of has me blown away, is AI on your product roadmap anywhere for this product to do anything predictive so the town can better plan for the future? Is that something that you folks are adding to this system?
Yeah, we actually have some AI already in the software. One example of AI in the system is the ability for the software to actually write budget narrative for you. So like this sentence that I have highlighted here on this page, that's an example of some our AI tool that I can do. So instead of you having to manually type a sentence, if it's a sentence that you tend to write year over year, and really it's just a number that updates, right? Total revenues for the town's annual budget was fill in the blank. The AI can just pull from the data set and populate the number. Think of it like if you've ever made a mail merge in Excel, something similar to that, right? Where there's a formula pulling from a data set. We are just scratching the surface with AI. We're planning lots of more AI features inside of our software. We have in our operational budgeting module, as an example, you have the ability to do 10-year financial forecasts inside of our system today and collect that data. You could imagine some pretty powerful simulations that our system can do. We actually have some of these already on things like union negotiations and our personnel planning tool, as an example, but we're planning more and more predictive things inside our software as the AI tools that we use continue to maturate. And quite frankly, as we get more and more clients who are excited and want to use AI features in the software.
Cool. Thank you very much. At $10 a user or $10 a citizen for the community, that price point for that software is a real value. That's basically what it breaks down to.
All right. What?
I don't have any more questions.
Okay. My suggestion would be for everyone to take a look at it on, go to the town of Milton or the city of Tarrytown and take a look at it to see whether or not you think this has value and if we want to figure out where we're going to pull 6,000 that's not budgeted for this year, and then realize that it's going to be $6,500 cost for next year's budget.
Village of Tarrytown.
Tarrytown's village or city? Village, okay, village of Tarrytown. Okay,
That's where I grew up.
okay, cool. All right. Thank you very much, Rob.
Thank you all so much.
Okay. Now that we've gotten through our special guests for today, we will go to public comments. And Michael Gainer put his name on this.
I'm gonna tip out for a second. I'll be back.
Okay.
Hello, Mike Gaynor, 8 Hobbits Lane. As a preparatory statement, everybody knows I'm very much opposed to Sylvester Manor Educational Farm as an institution, as an operating organization. I think they have been very incredibly poor stewards for the Sylvester Manor. They've taken millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars of resources from the state, from the county, from the town specifically, and the place is falling down. And so I've commented about on June 28th, they're going to be having an event there, a fundraiser that they've had 12 times now. And I believe I've talked about 2 aspects of that event that I am in strong disagreement with. I'm an adjacent neighbor. I share 400 feet of property line with them, and the place is a fire trap. And I've spoken about that, and I don't think they should be having a 450-person event there. And I think the town should have police, fire, and EMS there for that event. And if they do that, they should get a special event permit, like every other organization, respectful organization inside of this community. It's a really dangerous event. I've made that point. That's not what I'm here to talk about today. When I first moved to this community, one of the very first things I noticed was this sign right here. You might have seen it before. It says Shelter Island settled 1652, Nathaniel Sylvester, 1610 to 1680. A sugar merchant of Barbados was the first resident, so the first guy to live here in this town, and they call him a sugar merchant. Nathaniel Sylvester was no sugar merchant. Nathaniel Sylvester was a slaver. And directly 0.47 miles from where you guys are sitting right now, he ran a slave plantation, right? There are several hundred slaves buried over there in an unmarked, uncared for gravesite. I've sent you off this article from the Equal Justice Initiative that they wrote recently. And one of the things that the Equal Justice Initiative does is they're an actual not-for-profit organization that tries to influence policymakers to raise awareness about slavery inside of these plantation sites. In the north of the Mason-Dixon, there are only 2 of these sites in the United States. One of them is right here on Shelter Island, right down the street. And this is what they write to raise awareness about these things, where these things have been turned into event centers. They have massive concerts there. They have weddings there. They do all this stuff that's completely inappropriate. I'll make this very brief. Today's plantation landscape reflects the nation's reluctance to confront the true history of slavery and its legacy of racial injustice. Amy Potter, who studies plantation tourism and is a professor at Georgia Southern University, says telling the truth about this history is a moral imperative, especially now when there is a movement across the country to limit the teaching of our history. A plantation edutainment complex has emerged. According to a 2018 National Science Foundation funded study of 15 plantations in Virginia, South Carolina, and Louisiana, led by Ms. Potter, describes the commercialization of plantation sites to tout luxury inns, Halloween ghost tours, wine and bourbon tastings, strawberry festivals, and plantation weddings, their biggest moneymaker, right? Stephen Searle, who runs that place over there, came up, he's up in front of the zoning board, you heard this, and he said, no, at the first time he went to the zoning hearing, we're not gonna have any more weddings over there. You know, slavery has kind of gone out of favor since COVID. 1 month later, he shows back up at this podium right here. He says, I spoke completely inaccurately. We actually have had a bunch of weddings, and we're going to continue to do so. And they have a plan that describes wedding sites all over that property. This is what that gravesite looks like on that property. Have any of you taken the time out to go look at Sylvester Manor? You know they're about to come up in front of you for site plan review. Go take a look at this thing. There are over 200 human beings buried inside of this place. There's garbage strewn all over the place. And they're going to have a party over there on June 28th. This is a model of a slave boat. Okay? I spent about $1,000 getting this stuff printed up, so I'm very serious, and the last place I want to be right now is inside of this room. This is a model of a slave boat. This is a Dutch-built slaver. Nathaniel Sylvester, in the fall of 1666, chartered one of these things, like you'd go charter a fishing boat out there in the bay, right? And he went down to the Ivory Coast, and he picked himself up 100 slaves. It's basically a riverhead of shopping centers down there for human beings. And you go along the coast, and you go get your best deals. These things, he lost 20% of the Africans that were put on this thing before they made it back to his Barbados plantation, and they were tossed overside. Some subset of these people are sitting 0.47 miles from where you're sitting right now, and these guys are going to go have a party there in a couple of weeks. They've had concerts there where these people are buried in a mass unmarked grave. Them and their children and other family members that actually survived this. Do you know you were lucky if you got to get over to Sylvester Manor? You know what they used to do to these folks? I sent you a copy of that book, The Manor, 300 Years of Slaving. You know what they would threaten these people with? Watch your mouth, or you're going back to the Barbados, where you're a dead man. That's 1666. This is 130 years later. This is an illustration from a famous court case that took place in England. They were approximately 60 years ahead of us in outlawing slavery. This young slave girl right here, a 15-year-old slave girl, what they would make those slaves do, they'd pull them out from out of the hold in order to exercise them. They'd bring them up on the deck and they'd make them dance. This guy's name right here is Captain Kimber. This guy whipped this young girl to death. She doesn't even have a name. This is a massive lawsuit going on in Parliament, went on for a long time, really influenced England to end slavery. He whips her to death. The surgeon on the boat witnesses it and documents the whole thing. You know he got off for that? This was in 1799, another 130 years later. Slavery would go on in this country for another 60 years after that, and they're having parties over there. I am not trying to embarrass Ben. I am not trying to embarrass anybody. I'm trying to shame you people into doing the right thing. You folks are policymakers. That is an important institution inside of this town. You have the capacity to guide them and make them do things better. I don't want to put Sylvester Manor out of business. I want them to act like reputable citizens. Here is Ben Diet dancing a couple of 100 feet from where 200 of presumably, potentially his ancestors are buried over there. And when you look at the population dynamics metrics of how those slaves turned into 20 million African Americans in the United States, there's a decent possibility that that happened. This is ridiculous. I'm asking myself, where are people in this community who raised you? Honestly. That I'm actually having to stand up here and have this explanation about allowing these people to have their party. There should not be music there. There should not be dancing. They want to raise awareness about Sylvester Manor. That's reasonable. They want to raise funds to go clean that place up. That's reasonable. This stuff is not a 300-person concert that they had last year. That was ridiculous, Amber. And you take no enforcement action against those folks. And all they do is break one law after another, and this is what is going to go on there. This kind of stuff. People getting drunk, they're going to have unlimited alcohol over there, they're dancing, they're parked right behind my house, and this stuff makes me sick to my stomach that you guys are allowing this to take place. Will you please do something about it? All I've asked you to do is go speak with them and see what you can do, and nobody's doing that. This should not be happening where a bunch of human beings are buried. I told you to speak with Father Peter about it and get his insight. Go talk to our new African-American police officer, P.O. Carter. Go talk to him and see what he thinks about this. Unfortunately for us, less than 1% of the population is African-American, so I have to stand up and do this inside of this community. This is wrong. This should not be taking place. I'm not asking a lot. Just don't play the music and don't dance. I'm not a super smart guy. I didn't graduate from high school. This is not fun for me. I don't want to do this. I'm asking a very simple request. Please stand up, have some moral courage. Do you think this is a good idea, Gordon? You're vying for that seat there. Do you think they should be having parties over there? I'd like to know.
Finish your presentation.
I'm basically, I'm at the end here. You've seen all my photographs, you've heard my argument. I don't know what else there is to say.
Michael, this is not about politics. This is not about running for an office, okay? I really, I'm hesitant to get into the conversation, but I think you bring up some issues, okay, that are really social issues, okay? And I thank you for doing that. That's all I can say to you at this time.
That's the kind of moral courage that these people are talking about as policymakers. Who's going to do this if you guys don't? If you guys don't stand up, you have the tools. I gave you the tools. It's an unsafe event. No, you couldn't do that anywhere else. So I gave you the tools. You have the capacity. If you wanted to stop somebody from having a rock concert, I promise you, you would find a way to stop somebody from having a rock concert. Those folks are a bunch of boats. These people, these big, affluent, wealthy people, we all know what this is about. You guys know that these people, whoever gives these guys the guns is going to lose all of those votes. So one of you have got to do it, or both of you. It's a completely reasonable request. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mike. Any other public comments? Zen? Our next item is an outdoor assembly permit, which we have in front of us. It is the Shelter Island Town Rec Department. Tom Halstaden submitted it on behalf of the town. It is for music concerts at the beach. It will be at Wade's Beach. The dates are going to be, let's just see here. July 9th, July 23rd, August 6th, and August 20th. And they will start at 3 and end by 8 p.m. And this is an event that has been sponsored by the Town Rec Department in the past. And Meg, you're on the subcommittee that reviewed this with PD and Highway?
Yes. This has not been problematic in the past. It's worked fine. What ends up happening is the event really starts at 4:30. The TCOs typically do their last round of checking parking tickets and stuff at like 5. So what they typically do on nights where this event is happening is they stop at 4:30 checking parking. So it's not really too much of a problem with the parking passes. But otherwise, it hasn't been a problem. People seem to have enjoyed the event. It's in conjunction with the town rec department, so it's well maintained and managed. Neither PD nor Highway had any problems with it. Any questions from the board?
So the stage is set up and left there for the
No.
duration?
No, just.
They set that up for one
Mhm.
afternoon and then break it down?
Yes. Yeah, they're always done before dark so that they can clean up and be gone before it gets too dark.
What are these days without going through my phone that they're asking? Is it a weekday or weekend or?
It's usually Wednesday or Thursday night.
I thought it was Wednesdays, but
Yeah.
it could be. July 9th is a Wednesday, July 23rd is a Wednesday, August 6th is a Wednesday, which was.
So it's Wednesday?
They're Wednesday nights.
Okay.
The rain dates are alternating Wednesdays as well.
This is being sponsored by the Recreation
Yes.
Department?
Yes.
It's a very nice social event for the community. They do a
Yes.
good job. I've been to many of them, okay. Seem to be something we've done multiple times. I have no problem with it. I think it's something good for the community.
I totally agree. I support it.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the public? So, all right, so whenever you can put it on for resolution next week. Do you have another question?
So parking? Okay, I got it.
Yeah, it's just Wade's Beach, so the
Yeah.
whole parking lot.
Yeah, I believe.
Whatever.
Yeah, I think there's about 90 parking spaces.
Yeah, well, never mind.
Joe's on. It's on
Oh,
Zoom.
no.
Yeah, were you going to come down, Joe?
I was gonna say, maybe you might be coming
Exactly.
down.
Waiting for Joe, and then, oh, there we go.
Did he say that he, oh, okay.
Hello again.
Hello again. You guys hustled through that agenda faster than I was planning.
Finish your lunch?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, went
Get a little manic.
the lunch up. Yeah. You want me to wait for Meg to return, or?
Yes,
Okay.
please. While we are waiting for Meg, I'll just, because our next thing would be board member reports. And Tim Pertel dropped off the homeowner guide to irrigation. It was left at all of our seats. These are available in town hall so that the public can pick them up and understand the benefits, risks, and sections of our town code with respect to irrigation. So it's a nice little pamphlet that's been pulled together.
Those are available on the front table?
Yes,
Just out in the hallway, everyone.
yes, yes. Mhm.
Well, since Teller's Island was this morning and it's fresh in the mind, I'll start with that. Season is underway. The opening of the island was very smooth. Not a lot of maintenance issues, but it's under control, underhand. Already they have reservations for 4 or 5 overnights between now and the next meeting of the committee, which is apparently kind of normal. They're planning for the annual party on the island is set for August 15th. It is going to be scaled down, limited to 50 people. The menu sounded interesting, included lobster rolls. They have, someone had donated a light for the flagpole because the flag was flying there 24 hours a day and not illuminated at night. And people were getting, or let's just say people were concerned. So there's now a light for the flagpole. The general gratitude party for all the volunteers is set for this Saturday. But inclement weather has been forecast for Saturday, so it may be moved. So if you're planning on attending, just keep an eye out. It may be moved. And they are scheduling the annual July 4th reading of the Declaration of Independence on the island, which they do it annually. And that's kind of most of the business. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, so we'll pause on board member reports and go back to Joe. And USGS saltwater intrusion monitoring well.
Yes. So the background to this project is that the town solicited proposals from the USGS several years ago, pre-COVID. And the purpose of the study was to better understand our interface between fresh drinking water in our aquifer and salt water. The proposal that we received from USGS was outdated by the time we, as a township, were ready to execute. So I've been engaging with them to update the proposal. This has long been a priority for the town. It's on the heels of the center testing that was done for nitrates, and largely understood that saltwater intrusion is what risks a different and large portion of the population here. So to that end, we re-engaged with USGS to study and figure out how to study that saltwater interface. What they've proposed as an update to their proposal from circa 2018 was a surface-based test, snapshot style test where they lay out electromagnetic equipment that pulses through the ground. And at those specific locations, it measures the depth and the salinity of salt water and how it interacts with fresh water. In conjunction with that testing effort, they have proposed to install a deep monitoring well. Normally, when we put in a drinking water well, we stop after we penetrate to a significant amount or a substantial amount of fresh water. But if you continue drilling, you'll ultimately go through, get to salt water and then continue to go through different layers of salt water. So to supplement the snapshot style saltwater monitoring through the electromagnetic testing, they have proposed to install this deep water monitoring well, which will actually tell us throughout the course of the year where the saltwater level fluctuates, both how it comes up, how it goes down, and we can correlate those readings with calendar dates, with weather events, and their position that this is overwhelmingly the best way to study that saltwater interface. The really good news is that they are embarking currently on a project to install these types of deep monitoring wells throughout Suffolk County. And as of this moment, they're able to include the installation of that deep water monitoring well at no cost to the town, so long as we provide them with the location. So this is just a monitoring well. It could not be converted to a production well. It's akin to the other monitoring wells that we have throughout the island, where we monitor the aquifer height. This just would penetrate much deeper into the soil and extend into different layers of aquifers so we can measure the water quality and content at those deeper depths. I'm currently working with two hydrologists on the placement of that monitoring well. Their preference is to put it somewhere in the center of town. The goal is to get to the center of the aquifer so that they can complement those readings with those periphery electromagnetic readings. And I'm slated to meet with two hydrologists next week to tour some sites. We are looking at town properties here in the center. It may be something as close as next door or at the school or at Sachems Woods. Any of these places are on the table. At present, I'm letting the hydrologist dictate to us what their preferred site is from a quality of reading standpoint, and then we will work through what the town would permit, in terms of a site. It doesn't occupy any real space. The only space that's needed is just for installation. So while the truck is drilling the well, it will need access and it will be, very visibly present, quite noisy. But that's short-lived. And once the well is installed, it will be, pretty much non-visible. It will project out of the ground as little or as much as we like, depending on the site, if we want it to be visible or if we want it at grade so that it's not visible. But there will be no fencing or building around it. It will be fairly or almost completely unnoticeable. So this will be in for the long term. This is a decades-long instrument that will be installed. So we want to pick a place that's unlikely to be disturbed. And at this juncture, the no-cost option, is quite attractive. This is something that would be added to our network of monitoring wells throughout the island. We don't have any wells that monitor in this capacity, so this is a great new tool. And it's one that I believe will be invaluable in helping us understand the aquifer, how our relationship with salt water, and really, I don't see any downside at this time. I don't have anything on paper from them, so there's no commitment to terms quite yet, I don't expect any surprises. USGS has a long-standing partnership with the town for this type of work. So I'm keeping you updated. I'm hoping that you'll continue to support. I'm hoping that you support this. I don't actually know you currently support it, but I'm hoping that you will. And I will continue to proceed with this so long as you guys support, you guys agree that this is a good move.
If it's cited, on one of our properties, does it preclude other uses on that? I'm thinking if they decide this is a good location and then we're trying to do the wastewater, siting as well.
It would preclude, most specifically because of the space. You wouldn't want to disturb this well once it goes in. But in terms of like impact, if you put something like a septic system next to it, no, that wouldn't complicate or it's deep, exactly, yeah.
Joe, is this funded by, how does this funded?
USGS, yeah, so
They're doing this on their own expense.
that's right. It would be used either as a standalone monitoring well for us in the future, but right now we're also soliciting that proposal to study the saltwater interface. It'd be used in conjunction with that, complementary to that proposal. So you could do either or. It's just at this time it would be a great addition to that analysis, which we have money budgeted for.
And it's primarily for saltwater.
Exclusively, yeah, exclusively.
I know we've talked about this in the past, and I think this has come up multiple times, that there, community preservation has property that has existing test wells on it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that of any value to, that's not, we're not doing extraction, it's basically for test wells. Would any of these properties be of value to USGS, or have you brought them that information up to them to see if that's an available, that would be something that they might consider?
Yes, definitely. Right now, there's a giant bullseye around Town Hall as our desired area. That's what they sent to me, actually. And so all those options are on the table. There aren't many, if any, I think, CPF properties within the current bullseye for this particular effort. But I think that's an important piece to keep in mind that, for monitoring wells, those, that's a great asset that the town has is this.
So the shoreline, you're not putting any wells close to that at all?
No.
Okay.
No.
So it's basically, you're really measuring, because this is really the focal point.
That's right.
The
That's right, yeah. We're looking for the deepest installation that we could get.
What about on the Rams where they're separated, they have a different, not that they have a different, but they have their own water issue? Would we be monitoring any of that out there as well?
That's a very good question, because we have monitoring wells on the Ram Islands, but they're not of this variety.
Right.
The challenge with the Ram Islands specifically is that their water system is independent of ours.
Right.
So what we see happening on the main portion of the island is not necessarily what's happening over there. Largely, we haven't made investments like this over there simply because that's not where the bulk of the population exists. And so what we would be able to decipher from that study would be limited to just the Ram Islands. It's not to say we couldn't do that.
Do we have other known areas that are similar to Ram Island where they have their own little pocket that like similar pockets like that? I know that we say there's one aquifer, but really it's a multiple pockets. So we have this different, do we have other areas like that?
We have other pockets with different levels of isolation. The Ram Islands are the most isolated. Arguably, they're disconnected. And we don't have any others like that, but certainly neighborhoods like Montclair or Silver Beach are similarly pocketed. Westmoreland, right. Anywhere you have a peninsula and any sort of a choke point, that's where you'd expect some native aquifer characteristics that are a little bit segregated from the primary. Yeah. We are not planning to put anything in over there. It's not to say we can't, but this one is designed to be here in the center of the island.
Joe, I think it's a great opportunity. I'm just curious, what is the monitoring? How is the monitoring going to be conducted?
It's done by USGS, so we don't perform that. And the goal, at least for This particular study is to gauge the elevation of certain salinity thresholds. So as you travel through, the aquifers and you get deeper, you'll have fresh water. And then sometimes it's not as clear when it's a transition into salt water, but we have certain thresholds where you see the density of salt increase dramatically. So that's where we're going to be monitoring for changes in salinity at those different depths. And
So it's electromagnetic means of.
Yes,
knowing that
generally,
depth?
yes.
Okay.
Now, these wells can also be sampled, so we can collect water, physical
Okay.
water can come out of them. So that's a great multi-purpose, approach to the well also.
Thanks.
Any other questions from the table before I go to the audience?
Joe, the monitoring, the USGS has hydrologists, right? Okay. Are those, USGS is a separate entity? Is USGS available if the town wanted to use some of their hydrologists for looking into some water issues? Would they be available to us?
Be more specific about the water issues, because the answer would be dependent on what kind of issues.
Well, I'm just thinking outside that, that we don't have a hydrologist on board here. We keep talking about water quality in all these different formats. I'm asking the question. They're like they truly are a third party. They have no vested interest. I'm just wondering, are their services available on a consulting basis if the town saw the need for having a hydrologist to look at something?
Yes and no. Yes. The USGS has arguably the best and the greatest collection of hydrologists in the country. Their job is to collect and analyze data only. So they never cast an opinion about causes or make recommendations for treatment, but they are experts in understanding what is fact, what is the geological makeup, what is the water quality based off of tests, how to structure a test and an experiment, but where they stop is with recommendations for moving forward. They won't tell you about treatment types like we heard from the health department people. They won't tell you about what kind of public infrastructure you need. They don't do that kind of work.
The reason I'm bringing this up, and I don't want to get into specifics that I'm thinking about, but since there are issues that, we have, obviously the client will have his own point of view with his own hydrologist. Okay, the town at time has used outside consultants to get other opinions, okay? Yes. And obviously now that we have legislation that helps us recoup some of our fees, or study the information from consultants, okay? That's why I was looking at that. So I'm just wondering if that's something that would be available to us, because they truly are a third party. They only give the data. They're not making opinions like you would have when a client is looking to do something.
Yes.
So,
Are you asking if we can use them for like permit application reviews?
I'm asking them that can we use them for anything that might require a hydrologist, which we have not done. But if we needed to go down that route, are they available?
Yeah, I follow your thinking. That makes a lot of sense because they are uniquely positioned as impartial scientists. I would say on one extreme, like a permit application consultant to the town, no, they would not be available for something like that. On the other end of the spectrum, about more broad studies of the water condition on the island, absolutely, that's their specialty. Where in between they would stop, that's a question for them. I don't know exactly. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Sean Davey, you have a question?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. A couple of questions, Joe. I mean, it's partially for my education, but hopefully in doing that, it makes everyone else kind of up to speed as well. I can't imagine if I have questions that everyone else is so crystal clear. The central well is an ongoing monitoring well that will give you that information over a longer period of time. You will then separately pick a handful of sites for magnetic resonance around the island. Is that a one-time then, or over a shorter period of time, and then that monitoring at those stops, but the other continues? Is that the?
Yes.
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 So, question of one, we're talking about, I think you typically were referring to it in terms of going down. So kind of the magnetic, imaging or kind of feedback, giving you a sense of where the salt water is and where the interaction is as you go down through the different, glacial layers or whatever you're referring to. Does it also, if you're doing it near shore, give you a lateral perspective so that if you're in near shore, and I could just be thinking of it wrong, but it gives you a sense of where the saltwater boundary is more kind of on a sideways? Because I get that I'm always under the impression that there's this potential for creep of that saltwater boundary moving inwards laterally in some sense that then reduces your ability to build near shore. Would it give you that kind of sense as well, or am I thinking about it wrong? Or
No, that's a good point, Sean. The arrays that they're proposing are not, they don't read laterally, but the range which they can read is adjustable. I'll air quote that, because if you have more space and you can install a larger array, you can see further out, almost like sonar or like a flashlight, perhaps in a dark room. The further away and the bigger the light is, you can get a larger cone for reading. But it's not a tool to measure laterally from where it's installed, if that makes sense.
right. I mean, is there a way to ask them to use it in some capacity in that way while they're doing it to give us some feedback in that regard, or it's just wrong tool, wrong?
Well, largely, I would say that is the goal of the analysis, is to understand what, if any, creep from the periphery of the island we have. So the placement of those arrays will be influenced by what space is available, but the goal is to understand what changes are happening at those locations. So we're constrained to available space, but we're trying to see specifically what changes are happening, what the creep is, and where those spaces are most vulnerable. So I think, to your point, we're trying to achieve what you're suggesting.
Yep. And would it give? I'm not having lots of questions here. Would it give kind of a sense of within that area that it is reaching a type of imaging, if you will, of what the aquifer structure looks like in that area, knowing that it goes up and down and different depths, and will you get kind of a sense of that for the area that it's penetrating, to see the variations from 2 blocks to where you are or something of that sort?
I don't think I can answer that question because we don't have the sites selected yet, but that is the goal, to understand what those changes are, and the differentiation that you point out is with regard to chlorides. So we're just gauging chlorides and concentration changes. So that's the only visibility that the study would give you into the differentiation of the layers or the changes. That's the only quality component that we're checking.
So it's not going to give you an image like a topographic map.
No, I
something
mean,
like
I
that.
didn't think necessarily like, boom, you get a little like there's a baby in a womb, right? Kind of thing. But like wondering if, whatever. I mean, you got to get the data and look at it. But, if you see, are you able to make reasonable assumptions based on the types of things you see, based on of what the aquifer underneath, how it changes from one area to another. Presumably that would be a yes. So,
Yes, I think we would, I think we would struggle.
You're halfway there. You can kind of derive a sense of what it looks like, but no, you're not going to get a baby in a womb and be able to see like, oh, look at the change here to there,
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's not live action. That's what we're, yeah. But I think we would struggle to understand a specific causality to the changes.
Right.
But we would have a number of variables to try and correlate, like seasonality, rainfall, things like that, to understand what are possible causes. But the most important derivative from this will be the scale of the change, if any. That's what we'd be looking for. That would help us understand how much vulnerability we do have.
And last question, would the goal be are you looking to pick the areas for outside of the central that either, like, what is the prioritization to capture the areas that are most concerning or that you really need information on? Are we placing enough of them that we're actually getting like a sense of, each sub neighborhood of, kind of what's going on there? Like, what is the breadth of kind of how much coverage we're going to get of the island or prioritization of, of how we decide what that breadth looks like?
We're juggling available resources, both in space and available space and in funding. And we're prioritizing historically vulnerable areas like peninsular areas like Silver Beach, Montclair. And I don't have a layout yet as to which neighborhoods would be probably best served by this, but that's the exercise that we're going through now. And with a focus on those communities, I would say, generally speaking.
Thank you. Really appreciate your indulgence. I think that was helpful for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Anyone else?
Yeah, I don't know if I've heard
If
it.
you could come up. Thank you.
It's kind of awkward when there's a speaker.
Yes, that's.
I don't know if I've heard it correctly, but so the US Geological Service will do this well at its own cost, like no expense to town. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so ongoing, so that's for first year for installation. What about the subsequent years? Will there be a cost to the town?
For long-term monitoring?
Yeah.
That's a good question that has to be worked out. I don't know the answer to that. Typically, they monitor these wells for their data collection. This well's installation is part of a larger Suffolk County program. So at face value, it doesn't appear that this is like a come-on deal that they hook you for a subscription on later. But the purpose is that this well would serve us for many years, for decades. Some of their other efforts have been in service for 30 years. I don't know what that looks like in the future if their data collection would end and we would be on the hook for paying for that. But at least for now, that's not the case.
Yeah, but before town makes commitment, shouldn't we find out what's the long-term cost?
Of course.
Any?
Yeah, of course. And
because I understand the US Geological Service monitors number of water wells throughout the island that the town pays for it.
that's right. Yes, they do.
And we have a contract with them.
We have a contract with them, and I don't know what would happen if we didn't pay in terms of, well, I know that they would probably stop collecting the data. I don't know what would happen in terms of the wells, if they just decay. But I don't think that I don't think they pass a judgment against you. But these are details that need to be worked out. Like I said, I don't have an agreement yet, but it would be forthcoming with the terms.
Okay, so my next question is like, what tangible use out of this data will be? Because from what I can see, we can monitor, okay, the saltwater intrusion now it's at 20 feet, next year it's at 30 feet. It's kind of nice to know, but what we're gonna do is this information. I mean, if it's free information, but if there is a cost to town, what is the tangible value of this information to town? So even if we see the saltwater intrusion going, border interface goes down or up, what are we gonna do with it? And the reason why I'm asking about it is because the town board signed up for the cellular covered study. It was like, if I remember, $25,000. And so we get decided what are we gonna do with it, all right? And, 25,000 there, 50,000 there, and, pretty soon it adds up to serious chunk of taxpayers' money, so. So what's the tangible use of that information?
This is a critical issue for our drinking water supply, understanding our resilience to saltwater intrusion, both laterally from the periphery and in understanding how much water we have here in the center of the island. The aquifer functions largely that we have a lens of fresh water, so it's thickest here in the center and thinnest at the periphery, and water flows from that thick part outward. When we see peripheral intrusion of salt water, that's largely due to a lack of water here in the center. Wells typically don't experience saltwater intrusion in the center here because there's that thicker band of fresh water to pull from. But this is ultimately the heart of the aquifer here in the center. The amount of water that we have and what's happening with the salt water below it is indicative of what's happening at the periphery. So we don't have any deep monitoring capabilities here in the center. We have a number of monitoring wells, which is what's exhaustively discussed at WAC meetings, which is a very helpful tool. It's our best tool in understanding when we might see saltwater intrusion throughout the summer. It's how we gauge whether we have a drought. But that just looks at how much water we have at the top. And our aquifer in most places floats. So there's salt water below it. This tool would allow us to measure what's happening at the bottom. So it's conceivable that you have an aquifer change that's you're blind to if you have salt water coming up from the bottom. We are only looking at the levels from the top. This is a tool that, I guess to Mr. Shadal's point, what will you do with it? Well, that's largely up to the community and the town board to digest the data. But at this point, its most important value is to give us insight into what's going on with our aquifer. I think it's short-sighted to say, the data has no meaning. I don't know that what we would do if we had that type of problem, but this is one of those warning lights that could potentially go off in the future that you'd have the benefit of reacting to. And if not, it's just another gauge to understanding the health of your drinking water system. What value you put on that, I can't tell you how to value that, but this is an opportunity to get this at no cost. We wouldn't otherwise ever pursue something like this because it is expensive. So that's, I say, balls in your court on how you want to handle that, but this seems like a worthwhile opportunity from a technical perspective.
Albert, I think you were on WAC. You might have even been chair. I think the last time we had a USGS saltwater contract. Do you recall what the...
For the electromagnetic study, I think it was maybe started in 16 and rolled into 17 as well when we were doing that, the USGS. And they were actually going to drill a well at that time. They had funding and then they lost their funding. I hope we don't lose the funding this time. But never developed. They did mostly they only did electromagnetic testing. It'd be nice to see any kind of results we have compared to those.
I think they did it in Montclair, and Mananac Peninsula was one of the sites where I remember reading about the study, that maybe we can figure out where they did it originally and then replicate that.
They did it multiple sites around the island.
Yeah, it's the same team.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's the same.
nice.
And with regard to timing, they would look to do this quickly. They have just finished a well on the North Fork. They have one more to do in Orient, and we would be next. So we should be prepared to react quickly, yea or nay, but it would be soon. This isn't a pipe dream, no pun intended, for 5 years from now. This would happen probably by 4th of July.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Dave Ruby, you have a question? You need to unmute yourself. There you
Yeah,
are.
just to add, USGS has an extensive network of monitoring stations, monitoring wells. That's where Greg Toner gets his well data from. I would be surprised if this well was not just merged right into that data. That's their job, and I doubt that there will be any future costs, but just my layman's opinion. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? How do we feel about Joe meeting with USGS and getting more information?
Feel pretty good about it.
I'm all in. I think that's a good thing. And I think really to get seasonal information too would be very beneficial, obviously.
Right.
You have any next steps?
With regard to location, like I said earlier, I've not put any constraints on their team as to where, but if the town has any no-go areas, that would be helpful. That would be helpful to know in advance. Like I said.
It would be great if they could give us 2 or 3 options. No, first choice, second choice, third choice.
I'll know more after we meet. That might be, the case that they say, hey, any of these 3 are fine, and then I'd share that with you. Yeah.
And do we have access to the school's property, possibly? I mean, as an option?
I've not asked them. It seemed like the township itself had some good options. If we are backed up to a corner, I guess I'll be happy to reach out to the other entities. But for now, I was trying to keep it within our purview.
Okay.
And you have a set date to meet with them?
Yes, I think it's the 9th. It's next Thursday.
Yeah, that would be the 11th.
11th?
Yeah, okay, so maybe we can report back on the following
Yes.
work session. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Who are the scientists that are handling this? I forgot. I'm just curious.
Fred Stone.
Okay.
Yeah, really nice guy. He's been there for like maybe 30 years or something.
Yeah.
And Andrew Lang. This is part of it. He's a bit newer, but been working with Fred for a while on this as well. Yeah.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Yep.
Back to board liaison reports.
Wow.
I don't think there's much going on besides WMAC. I was looking at the calendar before to see.
Yeah, last week there was nothing. Last week there was pretty much nothing.
Right, yeah, because of the holiday.
I just caught my notes from the BAC.
We had ETIP last week.
Oh,
So we
sure.
do have a draft of their presentation that we're just looking over and giving comments and adding the last few data points. And then it's going back to them for some revision. So pretty soon we'll have a presentation for the board. And then I did have a very interesting conversation with Joyce Novak and the Mananic Creek keepers. So Mananic Creek had been looked at by PEP as a potential site for one of their living shoreline rehabilitation kind of projects. And so they did some studying of Mananic Creek this last year, and they determined that it is not a viable site for the program because it has poor water quality and poor sediment quality. It has low dissolved oxygen, poor water quality. It's very muddy, fine sediments. So the things that they were trying to do is do like a package where they're growing kelp and seagrasses along with oysters and other shellfish, trying to, use an environmental solution to rehabilitating the area. And after some discussion about the options to making Mananic Creek a more viable living water body, dredging was really the only solution that we came up with. And, we've discussed this before in the past, that the challenge with dredging Mananic Creek is exactly that really fine, muddy organic sediment, because it's really hard to dispose of that. So what Joyce mentioned to me is that the state has a currently has a WQIP grant program open, and that this would probably be the perfect kind of application to this WQIP state grant, would be dredging the creek deeper in, now that we've opened the front of the channel with the county, applying to the state to help get the funding to do the rest of it. Because with the type of sediment we're talking about trying to remove, the likelihood that we'd have to ship it to New Jersey or Pennsylvania is very high. So what we can do is apply for this grant to have an engineer help us design how the dredging would take place, what we'd have to do to make it happen. The grant could help pay for all of that background work to figuring out how we can go, like, move forward with finding a solution to dredging the creek in some fashion. So that was something that I wanted to bring to the board and see if we could maybe talk to Joe and say, hey, Joe, maybe, or capital planning grants could look into the WQIP state grant program that's currently open. I'll forward the information to you. I think I forwarded it to Joe. And see if Manana Creek could be a viable candidate for that grant. And it is for the design and engineering and the work with with Army Corps, DEC, everyone who would be involved to move forward with kind of trying to rehabilitate the habitat. Part of what's happening is kind of the natural progression of a kind of pinched off waterway like that, trying to return to being a wetlands or developing into a wetlands, like a true marshy wetlands. But at the same time it creates a more stagnant environment. You get a lot of weird algae blooms. It's not a healthy environment. So it's something that we can consider. But that's just, I wanted to put that in front of the board and just say maybe capital planning grants can pick that up as a topic.
That's what I was going to ask. Is that something that the capital grants
Yes,
can research
yes,
to do that? Okay, because we have a meeting next week.
yes,
Okay.
And is that the request, basically?
yes. And I've forwarded the information already. So I'll resend it so it's bumped in your email. I'll include Jen and, capital planning can look at it. I'll also include the information I got from Joyce on what the problems are. And the Manana Creek Keepers have already put out their water quality monitoring devices for DO and temperature and everything. So we can see if the data this season is better than the data last season. Now that we've dredged the beginning of the creek, it might improve the water quality for the first monitoring station that's towards the mouth of the creek. And if that's the case, we can use that data to support the grant, saying like opening this up did help improve water quality in this area. If we could go deeper, it could improve the water quality deeper in the creek. So that was just my brainstorm. So I figured I would send that to capital planning.
Thank you.
You're welcome. WMUC.
Sure. Feel free, whatever.
WMAC. I guess the first thing was the Coast Guard is looking to remove navigational aids, the buoys, from areas, and we're kind of really dependent on those. So the WMAC, they talk about writing a letter in opposition, or maybe the town board could write a letter in opposition, or both. It's something that they're desperately opposed to. We need the navigational aids.
Why are they going that way?
What's that?
Is it because of money?
Probably.
Because the Coast Guard doesn't want to monitor some of these navigational aids?
I don't, you know what, Gordon, they want to do everything, I guess, change the navigation, do it electronically, not by visual buoy.
No, they don't want to maintain the physical buoys.
And maintain.
And because a lot of it can be switched to chart plotters, but, some, I looked at the list and some are like, sure, get rid of that one, but then some are just really critical areas that are, the approach to Cape Cod Canal, So
we've had a couple here on the island where they removed them outside Cockles Harbor, okay? And for a number of years, they removed it, and there's two that's far off of Mashamik, okay? I mean, when I say far off, it's probably a quarter of a mile. And people consistently hit that rock and almost sank, okay? So, I mean, those are the runs that are really, really critical. If I can't see why they would.
Two on the list are the buoy that marks the ruins for Gardner's Bay, the north side of Gardner's Island. That's one that's going to be removed, and
wow,
yeah, lots of boats are going to hit that.
Yeah.
Without that buoy.
So sad.
MOA, they want to take out MOA in the middle of Gardner's Bay. So, you know, like I said, there's some that are a little problematic. Go ahead, Albert.
We do have a draft of that letter. Bill Garrity circulated it.
You did, okay.
Just a little while ago.
All right, good.
To that point, I feel like it should come from the town board. I mean, we could do both town board and WAC, but.
No, last time we asked them to write it, and we were going to decide how it was going to be sent. As long as it comes on a piece of paper that says Town of Shelter Island on the top, I think that's what is going to get their attention. I mean, I know the yacht club is writing a letter, but they're not going to care.
Yeah, no, I just figured I would prefer it comes from the town board, just because I feel like it would carry the weight coming from us.
The other question I had was with the shellfish. Did we want to write a letter about the South Ferry Basin not being aquaculture?
Scout program, yeah. Yes.
So maybe we can,
do that.
WMAC could do those two letters?
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Carry on, but sorry, I just.
Then there was a discussion that Ram's Head Inn has installed 2 floats on some of their moorings. And there was a question of, are they using these floats to tie up boats to or something? I guess we need to have a conversation with them, with Ram's Head, and just what's the intent here. I know Bo had kind of passed judgments that the floats are vessels by our town code. I don't quite understand that, but as he was reviewing our code, he thought that these were okay to be tied up on a mooring. It's something to be pursued.
WMAC did not agree with that.
I would defer to Steve on that one.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you guys were on, then you were on
The
it.
other question on that one is, what do we do about enforcement?
And actually, Chief Reed has just lit up his. You have something?
Yeah, no, and what I would say to Councilman Dixon is that I think Bo's interpretation was not made alone. I think he had conferred with the prior town attorney in making that that decision, but I am more than welcome to refer it to our current town attorney and look at it in totality.
It's just something, it needs more review, Jim, yeah.
Completely understand, and we'll get a look at it, and we'll get back to you on that, because we definitely want to be on the same page.
Okay.
I guess you and Bo should be in the enforcement conversation, because if it's determined that these floats are being used for what we hope they're not being used for, and they shouldn't be tied to the moorings, how do we enforce that? How do we?
Yeah, 100%. That's on us. So we should absolutely be involved, because we are the enforcement arm in that regard.
With respect to speaking to the Ramshead Inn, with respect to speaking to the Ramshead Inn about the floats, was that something that WMAC was going to reach out and do, or did they want the town board to do?
No, it just, we should reach out and get some indication. I mean, before we, or just look into it first and then reach out.
Who, Albert, who should reach out?
James Eklund offered to reach out.
No.
Some people did not like that and thought he might be a little conflicted.
Yes.
But if any, the town should be doing this, right? But, yeah, WMAC is part of the town, but.
Yeah, no, I just wasn't sure if someone, if it was decided on who was going to reach out. Otherwise,
Do you want to volunteer?
I will make that phone call.
And the question is, okay, these things are there, what's your intention? Are they there just temporarily and they're gonna be moved, or are you gonna be tying up visiting boats and ferrying people into the restaurant? Which we don't want.
And Royer was discussed, the dredging of the private boat basin off of Peconic Avenue. Spoils were placed on the north side of the basin, like they had showed on their plan, but there were also spoils placed on the south side of the inlet to the basin, which was expressed that it was partially Silver Beach Association property. I don't know how that took place, and what that is. And also, the issue still remains that last year, they apparently installed over 100 feet of bulkhead on the basin without DEC permit or application process involving the town. Not good.
Yeah, they're gonna look into it, but basically, they were here a couple weeks ago, said they were gonna be good and follow the rules and do it, and apparently, they might not be doing that. So.
The building department did go out there, and the south side of the basin is partially owned by Royer. And then there had been a conversation with someone from Silver Beach Association who wanted a little bit of the spoils placed in some, fill in some holes. So
Maybe that's where, I think that might have been where they put in the new bulkhead, so they needed to backfill behind that.
I went down and looked at it, and the bulkhead is failing on that side and it is washing out. So a lot of there's definitely a section of Silver Beach that's washing out under the bulkhead. Even because I went, when did I go? Saturday or Sunday? No, Monday. Was Monday yesterday? Yeah, I went Monday. Thank you. And I walked down the Silver Beach property because I had talked to Doug Sherrod. And I went down and I noticed that there was already huge washout on the Silver Beach side because it's going through the bulkhead, because the bulkhead's kind of failing there. So even if they just filled it, it's already washed out. So there's already holes. I mean, it's not, the bulkhead itself is falling apart. So I don't know what.
I hope he goes through the proper channels
Yeah, it's hard to tell what happened.
if he's planning any bulkhead
we need to make
replacement.
sure enforcement keeps an eye on the application.
Then there was a bulkhead replacement on West Neck Harbor that was approved 7-0. There was a dock application that is pre-existing non-conforming, and the non-conformity was reduced. So the WMAC voted 7-0 to approve.
I'm at home, but I'm on it.
Chief, yeah, okay.
The modified plan, they modified the proposed plan and approved it.
Yes, yeah, reduce the non-conformity, which is part of our code. There were 2 moorings approved, both 7-0. The Malin Dock application, it was this, Jack Costello had indicated that the owner is planning on building stairs down to the beach for access to the dock. He's going to bring an application, obviously, before the town board for wetlands approval. I went there myself. There was vegetation removed in front of the house on the bluff, and there's a lot of washout through the bluff area. It's a fragile shoreline, and it's what it is.
And
it's just foolhardy to try to hold back Mother Nature, but that's just my opinion.
And whatever they've done has caused some damage already, and the plans that they're presenting to move forward are just going to create more damage. So, I mean, we'll review it when we get it and make a determination. But
the other thing I wanted to talk about was Grady Riley Garden Center. Amber, you and Meg, you were on the subcommittee for site plan review?
Pre-conference.
Pre-conference.
We attended the pre-conference.
Pre-conference. Who was there? You two and Reed, or?
No, Reed was not able to be there. He was out sick that day. But we had Julie Weisenberg from the planning board,
Okay.
Joe Fenora.
Oh, just to go through with a sign.
You're in charge of looking at this.
Sign
looking
function.
at- Yeah, that's all.
Okay.
So standard pre-conference.
Yes.
But my issue is that I was in the building department to talk over some things, I don't know, some weeks ago. And Mickey Chi indicated that he put a stop work order on the project. And it's been in operation now. How could it be in operation? That's my question.
Reed is on vacation, so I'm not able to follow up with him, but there is within our code, the building department can grant preliminary approval to operate while going through site plan review. So my guess is that is what happened.
Were you involved in that discussion at all?
No.
No, that was, you're assuming it's Reed.
It's a
All
building
right.
department.
I just thought, I mean, the library had site plan review, and we made them wait on their project until we approved site plan for them. So why are we letting, and it just so happens it's our previous supervisor, Jerry Siller, that has a garden center. Why are we allowing him to do this, to operate? I think I don't understand.
Reed will be back next week. We can ask him. But it is within his purview.
Okay.
Is there a site plan review schedule of this?
We are going to set the public hearing on Monday for June 30th to have the public hearing. All right, it is 3:57.
Oh, wait, a couple.
Sorry.
Because WMAC asked us, wanted the board to be asked for a couple things. One is the Royer enforcement thing. They would like some clarification on how the funds that are collected from the three town docks, Congdon, the marina thing, and
Deering Harbor.
Deering Harbor, and the
Town dock.
Town dock, but the three town docks, they were wondering if that money could be directed to them and controlled by them or designated for whatever use by them. Right now, it just goes into the general fund, I guess, of the town, and it is used for whatever it's used for. But they would like some input on how that money is spent, and possibly an earmark for things that relate to waterways.
I think we have to go over the whole waterways fund and how it's used.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. But I think it would be helpful for them to develop a plan as to what they want to do with that funding. Because that's
I think before they took that step, they wanted to know if it was even possible, but sure. The other thing relates to the aquaculture leases, but I'll talk to them a bit, see if we can get a draft letter. There is some question there's a jurisdiction question as to the ground under the water. State land, I guess state has ceded control to the county. And the county, what's our relationship with town land that the county controls? This is a jurisdiction question that we need to at least look into. I mean, none of it is in inland waters, which we have home rule over.
Right.
But the rest of it from the map I see is really state land, that jurisdiction has been ceded to the county. And I guess the real question is, we do have home rule within 1,500 feet of our shores. And some of these leases are in that area.
See, Steve, you,
Yeah, I don't know the specifics of this particular issue, but I can just tell you generally that when one municipality has a presence within another municipality, they are subject to regulation for proprietary actions and that they take, but not for governmental actions. So, for example, when I was a village attorney, somebody at the water district who had a facility located within the village had parked a boat on the water district property, which was not a governmental function. And so that was subject to the village code. I imagine the same would apply here, that you can regulate county property within the town, except insofar as it's being put to a governmental purpose. That's the general principle.
Yeah.
How it applies in your particular case, we'd have to discuss some more.
And oyster farming is not a governmental purpose. So, no, okay. Thank you.
Sure.
I think that was it.
Yeah, that's all.
I had.
I just, since we talked today with the consultant, but the gentleman from ClearGov about that program to put together for the budget, what I wanted to find out is when is our, I guess they call it the AFR report, going to be put together for the county on the town from last year, the annual financial report.
Yeah, the auditors are working on that. There were some journal entries that were recently made, and I have to double check with Shelby, but I think that they were getting turned over to, from the contract accounts to the auditors.
Okay, are we going to get, is the board going to get a look at the draft or that you have on this before it goes to the auditors, or just take a look at, just so we can start preparing or get?
Yeah.
Okay, that's basically what I was looking for, okay, and when we get into is there any timeline at this moment, okay, for when the budget process will begin? Do you think it'll be the end of June, July, in the first week of July? What timeframe are you thinking of right now?
When I get back from vacation, I'm going to sit down with Shelby and we'll come up with the calendar, because the normal process is the department head, information goes out to the department heads. They are given some time to sit down and go through their budgets. Then it comes back to the town supervisor, and then I have meetings with department heads as I put together the supervisor's preliminary budget. And then from there, it gets presented to the town clerk, who then gives it to the town board, and then we start our town board work sessions on the budget. So I want to sit down and go through that entire calendar with.
Does the town board get to look at that before it goes out to all the departments?
No, the departments have to come up with what their budgets are.
I'm not asking about the budget, I'm talking about the last year's.
Oh, yeah, I mean, we get the monthly reports, they're gonna get, so Shelby.
You know, the one thing that I was looking at, since we did get these quarterly things, there is, when we get this, I never see in any of the audits anything to deal with receivables. Okay, and that was sort of surprising to me. So where is that buried in the, where is that in any reporting method?
I'm trying to think of what gets distributed to the board every month, and I think Shelby just gave us May today. I don't think, the accounts receivable might not be in the Williamson report, but.
I've never seen receivables here. I guess that's what it boils down to.
Yeah, I think that's kept in the town clerk's office. I wish Amber were here, she'd be able to answer that. But they get tracked there.
Part of it's highway. I mean, you got different receivables
Yeah, I was
all
gonna
over.
say, there's receivables in highway,
So
there's.
we get the highway reports, so wouldn't it be in that?
When you say we get the highway reports.
Meaning we get the
Abstracts.
the abstracts, yes.
The abstracts are.
The abstracts are payments, but I guess what I'm saying is the items that are being spent. When we had gotten the monthly reports, okay, it shows, what was spent in each department and so forth. But I've never seen receivables.
It's being taken in.
So yeah, we see the receipts in the report. So receivables are housed at Highway and Town Clerk's office. Justice Court is a whole separate matter because we don't.
You got the fire department? Don't they have receivables? Or
That would be from Highway.
Lines at the Justice Hall.
That would be Town Clerk's office. So
Or fire department?
which, from fire department receivable,
Fines,
that would be the Town Clerk's office for alarms.
but that alarms, okay, so, but that's not, okay, so is that, okay, that receivable belong, where does that receivable go? Does it go into the fire department?
Half goes into the general fund,
General fund?
goes to the fire department.
I just have never seen anything with receivables, that's why I asked that.
Under this new program that we're looking at, this will actually all be consolidated and we will see what the revenues are.
No, you will not, okay, but that new report, okay, is that the work we're looking at for that is they're basically taking our information, instead of it being in a spreadsheet format, they're putting it out in a different way, okay, which means there'll be more graphics in terms of seeing comparisons and so forth, okay, and then the other big part of that program, which I do like, okay, a lot, is that it breaks, it gives the public, when we do the budget, okay, each department has the ability of giving a little synopsis of what they've done during the course of the year. We spent this amount of money, we bought these number of trucks, and this is what we're looking to do in the coming year. So it can be broken down. It's a nice little storybook that gives the public a better understanding of their tax dollars at work.
Doesn't it track income?
I'm sorry?
It's only the budget, so whatever we budgeted for income, that's what's going to be in there. It's not part of no, it's just the budget. It's not part of the monthly reports that we get. It's not, it doesn't.
But Ben, but it's a good way of looking.
No, it's good
It
service.
forces every department to really look at it gives a story about what they've done, rather than just looking at a spreadsheet, which is just a bunch of numbers. Okay, but anyway, we're going to discuss that further.
Okay.
That's the receipts, but that is not the receivables. That's only what we collected.
Right.
So the receivables are like, we do see it in the audited financial statements at the end of the year. But I will have to check with Shelby on what's getting.
I think it would be good, like, in the end of the year, to see, because I think it is at the end of the year audit, okay? I saw something there with receivable, but it's not really broken out in a lot of places, okay? But further discussion, okay?
Yeah, but it's housed at the department.
And the only thing other thing that I'd like to talk about, okay, is we talked about the budget, but I think it was good to have the Suffolk County come here to do a presentation, and I think it really now is what I walk away today basically feeling, okay, and again, when we had a meeting last week, there was a question that you asked, Amber, you said it should be brought before the board because there are certain things that weren't decided on. And I don't know what those certain things are. Okay, I know that we're talking about IAs, but we don't know whether it's a single, a cluster. We got a lot of open pieces here. So I would like to continue to have our meetings, okay, on a regular basis, as far as that. I shouldn't say you, because you're on the board, okay, on a more regular basis, so that we can really develop a plan. And whatever it turns out to be, it turns out to be. And it may not be individual systems, it may be some clusters there, okay? And we're 6 months into the year, and this is, we're now just sitting with it. So I'd like to really see if we can get that moving forward, because they're very receptive to listening to us as far as what we want. So I think that's really, we need to move that on.
Yeah, The questions that we as a board needed to respond to were, are we willing to explore a off-site water system? So not individual wells on each lot with the septic systems. Like, is that something that we wanted to look into? Because if it is, then that opens up the options for where we can site sanitary systems. Or if we're going to try to do one community well in this area, we have to look into that. So like, there's,
we have people waiting, but we do have the 2 questions that Joe asked. So I've already slotted into the next week's work session to discuss those 2 questions that he asked. And then
You're looking for guidance,
And then
you're looking for
turn it
direction, okay?
Yeah.
I think,
So the town board needs to just discuss those questions and then turn it over to the task force to then do the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
And then come back to the town board one further down the road. So I'm cutting you off just because.
no, it's fine. We already had this
We're already 10
conversation.
minutes past 11 minutes now.
Yep.
okay, we're running late, okay.
Yeah, so we've.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. We are going to go into executive session to review the employment history of an employee.
Let me just stand up for a second. Yes. My legs out a little bit here.